Call to order the meeting of Mayor and Council. I want to welcome everybody here. If you will rise for the invocation by Councilman King.
We can bow our heads, please. Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity for us to be here tonight, Lord, and just thank you for the opportunity for us to serve our community. Lord, just be with us tonight and guide our conversations and discussions and give us the much needed wisdom and knowledge to make the right decision. And Lord, at the end of the day, we just give you all the praise and glory and honor for all the great things that are happening in our city and all the great things that are going to happen in our city. We ask all these blessings in your wonderful, glorious name. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. Okay, do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, sir. We deleted old business item number 1. We'll bring that back at a future meeting.
Okay. As a reminder to council, we do have an executive session following tonight's meeting. You've all received the minutes from our last February 14th meeting. If there are no questions or changes to those minutes, I'll accept the motion to receive the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
Councilman King, I'll second the motion.
Councilman King seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. All right, public comment. Do we have anybody here tonight for public comment?
We do. First is Dan Cannon.
Mr. Cannon?
I did want to ask before we start, I have some important things I think to say about the solid waste disposal question as a part of the public hearing. And I think that my comments about it would be more than 3 minutes, probably as long as 5.
Okay.
Thank you. Responsible solid waste disposal is a perennial need in virtually every municipality everywhere. To be clear, solid waste in Seaford may be categorized in several ways, but one of them is household garbage, household recyclables, leaf yard waste, bulky woody fibrous yard waste, and large or miscellaneous household waste items like old furniture, appliances, etc. Handling and disposal of these solid waste has been a matter of under discussion for years in Seaford. But what's the current status of handling solid waste? As far as household garbage goes, for many, the first step in dealing with household garbage is separation of recyclables from non-recyclable materials. Recyclable materials are picked up and transferred to the state of Delaware facilities and processed into reusable forms. For many residents, both organic and inorganic solid waste end up in a household garbage can and are ultimately deposited in state-approved landfills. The key element in these aspects of disposing of household solid waste is a cadre of about a half dozen or so companies which pick up both recycling and non-recyclable materials from Seaford clients. Typically, these disposal companies charge $80 to $90 a quarter for weekly pickup of non-recyclable garbage and 2 times monthly pickup of recyclable materials. Large items for pickups incur substantial extra charges, such as recently investigated $85 for a queen-size mattress, as an example. By and large, the current cadre of garbage and recycling disposal services is performing well at these tasks. I am unaware of any significant problems. Leaf materials. Homeowners, property owners are able to take advantage of the city's scheduled leaf pickup each fall. Leaves that are raked or blown into the street side curbs are able to be vacuumed up by city machines. By and large, the current leaf disposal service provided by the city are performing well. I am unaware of any significant problems, although I've heard rumblings that the composting area is a problem. Bulky or woody fibrous plant materials. Much other yard waste than leaves occurs as a result of tree and or shrub brush trimming with occasional broken branches after storms, etc. Such yard waste is so bulky as to be virtually impossible to bag. Currently, the city periodically sends a fleet of trucks to at times hand load materials and at other times utilize backhoes for larger, heavier materials. By and large, bulky plant materials disposal services provided by the city are performing well. I'm unaware of any significant problems, other than, again, composting. Large miscellaneous household waste. Typical residents will generate a fair amount of non-plant household waste over a period of years, such as furniture which breaks, bedding that wears out, scrap wood from projects, appliances that need replacement, etc. Much of such resulting solid waste is currently dealt with during the city-sponsored cleanup week in May each year. This city service calls for items such as those in this category to be placed curbside on certain days for free pickup and disposal. Cleanup week has been under fire from some city employees for years for what are described as multiple serious problems which are increasing along with costs. Cleanup week is being called unmanageable. Proposals are now being floated to curb or eliminate cleanup week services for residents. I am unaware of any proposals for elimination of cleanup week which would justify a significant reduction in the city service and result in significantly higher costs to residents who would have to seek other solutions to these unique household waste issues. Is this a true intent of Mayor and City Council to cut services and cost taxpayers more money? Thank you.
Do we have anybody else here tonight for public comment?
We have a Mark Davidson signed in.
Okay. Okay. It happens. Anyone else? That's it?
That's
Okay.
everybody.
All right, we're going to go ahead. Yes, please come on up, Mr. Milligan.
Jay Milligan, One Cross Gate. On this trash thing that was just discussed, I have an issue as well, and I really would like for some consideration on it. One is, as I mentioned before, a lot of senior citizens are using or sharing. And if we impose this cost on everybody across the board, we're going to increase it, particularly for a lot of senior citizens. The other thing I think that I'm concerned about, or I think you should be concerned about, or we should be concerned about as a city, is the fact that, you know, you're going to bid this out, and I'm sure go with the best bidder qualified. If, in fact, it doesn't work out, you got to switch. And when you switch to the next bidder, then that means everybody's day is going to change, and they're going to pick up all the cans and bring more cans. And at the end, if the cans aren't set in the right place, or they're turned over, or there happens to be a lid broke off one of them, which happens often, then you're going to create a customer service issue for the city as well. You know, my solution to this, I understand why the week that in May that everything's cleaned up and it's quite an issue. And I think if we really did analysis of that, that's probably within about 4 or 5 blocks, 4 or 5 streets that are abusing it the most. And I think that, are we overreaching for something that maybe we could find a solution to? And I'm really wondering if those big dumpsters in May could be placed in a few strategic places in the city, and everybody bring their stuff to that dumpster, and somebody there to make sure that they're a city resident. I think that might be more cost effective, and I think also that we'll put the burden back on the person, and nobody from outside the city would be able to dump. So I'd like to have that considered, you know, before we make a decision on this.
Okay.
But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and close our regular meeting at 7:09, and we'll open up the public hearing, and I'm turning it over to our building official, Mr. Bailey.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I have several items for public hearing this evening. Number one is for Bel Air Investments LLC. They have properties located on Chatham Drive. These are tax map and parcel numbers 531-10.00 through 414.00. Current zoning is R1, low-density residential. They're seeking a rezoning request of 8 single-family lots from the R1 low-density residential zoning to R3 high-density residential zoning to accommodate the proposed building of 12 townhome units and a community building on these properties. So these are the existing sites there. I've got outlined in blue. They're vacant lots now. The road is not constructed yet. They are working that way, constructing utilities and roads over on the left-hand side of that image. And they have current townhomes there to the right that are a little further along. They're finished pretty much now, the ones that are under construction in this photo. So these would back up to their existing townhomes that they are currently have. Here's the zoning map showing this area. The current area there just to the right of the red highlighted is the current R3 zone in the Bel Air, and it's plus or minus 10 acres. And they're proposing adding roughly 1.5 acres is the red area there just to the west of that current R3. And they did have this site plan submitted to show what the proposed townhomes and community center may look like if this rezoning was approved. And what they proposed here, they're not looking at this tonight, but it does meet the current, R3 zone for a townhouse lot. They've got the townhouses at the north and southern ends, and with a proposed area in the middle for a community center with a pool, additional parking. It's not shown on here, but it is delineated on the plan that they have submitted. And there are some representatives here if there's any questions that I can't answer.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Mike, can we look at that parking lot diagram, the plan for parking?
It's not there yet. It's just proposed. They don't show it on the plan. The only thing they show are the townhomes that right in the middle of that is delineated as text, as community center with parking.
So they're asking us to make a decision tonight with no...
This is purely for the rezoning. This is not for the site plan. That'll come later if this is approved.
Are the townhouses being built, are they going to be rentals? Or are they going to?
Yes, I believe that is the intent.
rentals?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman McCoy?
So just correspondence I've had with residents out there currently is they've told us they have problems with parking as it currently is. It's a problem. The HOAs have gotten involved and reached out, and they see it as an issue. I've been out there personally and looked at what they're talking about, and I see it as an issue. I'm concerned with making an adjustment to a plan and adding more houses requiring more parking. I know it's suggested that there'll be more parking or a different community center with parking, but that'd be my primary concern about this, is that going forward with 12 as opposed to 8, we know there's already a parking problem, and we're going to double down on that on some degree.
Yeah, the current zoning will allow, it requires 2 off-street parking spaces per townhome, so that will be part of that site plan if it comes back.
I'll further more on that. Part of the issue is people having trouble even getting down the streets,
Right.
regardless of the parking on the side, and it's just been various issues out there the last few months. So it's just what I've seen out there. I think it's a little bit of an issue.
Other questions or comments? Councilman Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have also been over there. The new townhomes that they constructed down there. I know people that moved in there, and over the weekends, it's true. It's very hard to find parking. Sometimes people will park down in places that are designated for people that live in that area, and they end up getting towed. I see the tow truck there all constantly, and so parking is a concern. The two parkings per household, you know, people have visitors over the weekend. A lot of people don't have 2 cars, they have 3 cars, and it's, so that is definitely an issue that I'm seeing as well.
Any other questions or comments from Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that, you know, it's zoned, it went through planning and zoning, and it conforms as a change of use, but what concerns me is that for the past 34 years, plus or minus, we've had an R1 zone that people to the north and to the east and to the south have invested in properties and gone by the strategy that this would be R1 property and not R3 property, and that the density wouldn't change, and it wouldn't. We've already calculated over a number of decades ago the amount of traffic that would go through there, and now it's going to increase. And my concern is that now that this has been shoehorned in, that the next block, they'll come for the next block, the R1 to change R3, and because this got approved, then the rest of that R1 parcel, the rest of that 8.5 acres will just fall like dominoes into R3, and thus making that just a much more dense than designed originally, and it affects the neighborhood around who were promised when this was done that it would be R1, that there would be single family homes back there.
Any other questions or comments? Yep, Councilman Holland.
Yeah. My concern was too is if something was to happen out there, Lord forbid, if the fire engine or something had to get down one of them streets, ain't no way in the world they will ever make it. So parking is definitely an issue out there.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council? Any comments from the public? Okay, Mike.
Bob Wheatley, he's the representative.
Mr. Wheatley, you want to?
Thank you. Yes, for the record, Bob Wheatley, I'm a local realtor and been asked by the owners to assist them with this particular application. And I hear the comments and you know, certainly we're sensitive to them. The original project that was built was built and designed to the rules that were in place at the time that it was done. Since then, I think the city has realized that there was an issue out there, and you've changed the code since then to you know, to try to address that. And this small section here will comply with what your new regulations are, and should not contribute. It's not going to solve a problem that's already there. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that. That's not going to happen. But I don't think it's going to contribute. We're talking about a net gain of 4 living units. We're going to go from 8 lots to 12 townhomes. And the benefit, the corresponding benefit there, is that the community gets a community building and a pool. They get an amenity that the community can use, and that is the trade-off. That's what, you know, that's the public benefit for getting the 4 extra units. Now, in regard to the parking, the pool and the community building will have to have its own parking, and it'll have to be done according to, you know, whatever the code says it has to be there, as will, you know, the townhomes. The situation that exists today with the parking, the owners have taken a look at that, and they have proposed to do some things that they think will help alleviate that problem. They are going to start issuing permits, parking permits for all the tenant vehicles there. They'll also post the parking permit requirements and towing signs. They'll add no parking signs along the rental side of Magnolia, And that's where one of the complaints from the HOA was there, that it came out that there was parking along that street. So we try to keep the parking so that it only happens on one side of the street so that you can get vehicles down there. Because I think that's where the real problem is if they're parking on both sides. So, you know, there are things that they can do, and if you have any other operational questions about that, the folks who manage the facility are here as well if you have any questions for them. So that's the issue with the parking. I get what you're saying about the so-called domino effect. You're in control of that. If that happens, it happens because you let it happen, okay? This is one small section that does make some sense because it backs up to the ones that are there. And frankly, if I were sitting where you were, I would be looking at what the public benefit is. If there were no public benefit, there would be no reason to do it. But there is a public benefit here. The community gets a much-needed amenity. The kids get something to do on summer days. The community gets a place where they can conduct meetings, they can have activities, and it just makes it more of a community there than what it will be otherwise. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, or if you'd like Mrs. Smith to come up and talk about the management, we can certainly do that, whatever you like.
Any questions for Mr. Wheatley? Is there anybody here who lives in that community? Oh.
Again, it's Jay. I live on the
Jay, if you can come up to the mic, I'm sorry. Rules.
I live on the corner of Crossgate and Magnolia, and I can tell you that there is traffic like you would not believe at this time coming out of there. I didn't quite get how many more units that would be. How many more living units would that be? Bob?
It's 4. 8 are permitted now, and there will be, we're trading 8 lots for 12 townhomes, so you're gonna get 4 more living units.
But how many additional places for people to live? 4 additional? 12 additional.
Or 8 lots.
But how many is the total living in these 4 units?
Honestly don't know. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna guess for you,
Total number of
45.
people living in the
Apartments.
Would it be
4
24?
buildings, right?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Jay.
How many doors are there going to be for people to live in those buildings?
So Mr. Milligan, in the proposal, there'll be 12 additional townhouses. They are, and the total that's existing there now, I believe, is 77 that they've built recently, okay? That is in addition to the existing ones that were there. And Magnolia and Rosemary had about, Mike, help me out, 25? Yeah. So additive, the 3 projects, I can't do the math in my head, but you're going to be well over 100 units now.
And at this time, there's 77.
In what they own, this developer owns, and what they have constructed recently, they've installed 77 units at that location.
So 23 additional units.
12 additional
12 additional.
is what is being proposed.
So it'll be roughly 24 cars is what we're talking about?
We're going to require, as a matter of code, we're going to require 2 parking spaces per unit, so your math is correct for parking spaces to serve the residential units.
Still not sure I understand.
Okay.
A building, they want to put 4 new buildings up, correct?
No, there's 2 buildings, and each one will house 6 townhouses.
And the pool's in the center.
Yes, sir.
See, if you look at the diagram, see the pool in the center?
Well, I know where that blue sign is there, what's right directly behind.
Right.
I rode through there the other day, and I agree with Councilman here that it is tight back there. And right now, there's cars sitting around. So that was my concern, and there is a ton of traffic that
presently comes out Magnolia. So
Councilman Henderson.
that's all.
Mr. Milligan, I think I understand what you're getting at. I mean, there's 8 building lots there now, so there would be room for 12 there, plus the additional lots that aren't built on yet. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I'm
Because
wondering where this is going.
there's probably somewhere between 30 and 36 empty lots left for single-family homes. Down, what is it, Danfield and Chatham and
To the west.
some of these other streets that may or may not be done yet to the west, right? That's vacant. The other 8.5 acres that isn't built yet. So I think I'm following what you're saying is you're inquiring as to what's left.
Yeah, and where we're going with it, you know.
Right.
That's,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, sir. Please come on up to the mic, introduce yourself and where you live.
My name's James Logan. I live in Governor Grant. I kind of tend to think, like it's brought up here before, that if you allow that to go in, the single lots across the street, you're going to let them build that now, and I'm going to tell you, nobody's going to buy across from that. Those single lots are going to just be converted. They're just going to morph right in to what all those apartments. It's just going to keep growing. It's going to be tough to stop them once that goes in, because nobody else is going to want those lots. They're going to look across, they're going to see all the cars there in front of their prospective houses, and they say, I don't want that. They don't want to move in. The other thing to consider with Jay was asking about how much traffic it's going to create, because they're going to put a pool in the middle or somewhere in there, there'll be people coming from the other development, the part that's already there, will bring their cars around and park there so their children don't have to walk. So you're going to have that much traffic there too. It's not just going to be, we'll put this one there, that one there, and that's the end of it. It's not, it's just going to, it's not, it would be very hard to control.
Thank you, Mr. Logan.
Can I ask you a question?
Councilman King?
Yeah, thank you. So is there any other plans, is there a plan B? Maybe the developer could answer that. So if it's zoned R1 and we're wanting to do this, and let's just say, hypothetically, let's just say it doesn't get approved. What would be next steps or vision for this piece of property, if any?
Well, it would stay R1, so it would be limited to whatever could happen in R1. Let me just clear up a couple of misconceptions, though. The homes that are getting ready to be built there are actually going to be rental units. So they're not going to be for sale anyway. They're going to be rental units. And I believe that your code office has already been working with the developer on the permits for that. So the idea that that is somehow going to be rezoned to something else is not very likely. I don't think that anybody would come in and ask for them, and frankly, I have advised them not to do that. They tried that 2 years ago with a rather disastrous result, and I think they heard loud and clear that that's not what the city wanted, what the people wanted. This, to me, represents a reasonable compromise in order to get an amenity in the community that they need, and this makes sense. I don't think anything else would, but I think this does. And combined with the fact that it's basically all a rental community. And the interesting thing about this, and it was interesting to me because I grew up like many of you did, in the era where home ownership was the goal. Everybody, that was the American dream. You wanted to own your own home. And you think, why, are people renting because they can't buy a home? I mean, that's what we used to assume, 30, 40 years ago. But that's not true anymore. Folks are renting now because they're choosing to rent. The rents on these townhomes exceed the mortgages in the development next door.
So, I mean, it's not that, oh, I can't afford to buy a house. And it's not that they have bad credit, because the landlord wouldn't rent to them if they had bad credit. They do credit checks, they do criminal background checks on everybody they rent to. So it's just a way the world is changing, and frankly, it's not anything that I understand, because home ownership still seems to be a good deal to me, but there are a lot of folks who are, for a number of different reasons, who are choosing to rent, but they want to live in a nice community. They want it maintained, they want good units, and they want some amenities, and that's the whole point of why we're here.
Any other comments from the public? Okay,
You got one, Steve.
I'm sorry, Steve. Oh, there you are. Mr. Mayor?
My name's Steve Mayer. I live in Governor's Grant, right on Chesapeake Avenue, which butts up to Bel Air. I had a question for Mr. Wheatley, and I might have misunderstood you, I'm not sure. Is the other 20, 30-some lots, they're not rentals?
Yes, they're going to be rental homes.
So they're going to be rental homes?
They're rental homes. It's the same
So-
thing, same idea.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I didn't know that was even happening. Seaford doesn't need any more rentals. Really, they need single-family homes that people can purchase. You're saying, people like to rent more. Yeah, they might like to rent more. Maybe they do, but rent is outrageous now. There's a lot of people renting places now that they can actually buy a home. So I just wanted to clarify, that they were all the way over to, is it Danfield, or going to be rentals?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, turn it back over to you, Mr. Bailey.
All right, so for item number 2, we have Balsamo Real Estate LLC. This is located on North Market Street Extended. It's tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.14. Zoning is C2 Highway Commercial. And they're requesting a preliminary site plan review for the construction of 2 commercial buildings and 1 warehouse building. This is the existing site out there near the Jay's Nest. I've got it outlined there in blue. It's a vacant property currently. And this is the proposed site plan that we received. They're showing 2 commercial buildings that will front on North Market Street Extended, and an accessory/storage building located in the rear of the lot. They're providing 27 parking spaces, and 25 are the required number by code. And they will require additional approvals from the State Fire Marshal, Sussex Conservation, and our city engineer for the stormwater system. And they did give me a couple elevations or renderings of the proposed, these are the commercial buildings that will front on Market Street Extended. So some storefronts on the front there, and some overhead doors for their storage areas in the rear. Mark Davidson and Ron Sutton are here representing the project if there's any additional questions.
Okay, are there any questions from council? Councilman Henderson?
Can you refresh my memory? Did we deed some land recently to them to get this fit in?
Mr. Bailey, will you go back to the site plan? You're correct, Councilman. Council did agree to enter into an agreement of sale for, my memory is 0.8 of an acre. And Mike, if you could just kind of trace and outline it. It's right there along Market Street.
And it's shown, this is the current property line, I believe.
Yes.
So everything in this area here is what will be deeded to them.
And we obviously have some utilities there. There will be an easement along their frontage there. You can see some of the, I think that's a transformer there. I can just update you on the status of that. We are working with their attorney, the Economic Development Director, and myself. We have not gone to closing yet, but I assume, maybe incorrectly, that they likely probably want to get their approvals prior to purchase of the land, but maybe Mr. Davison could update on that. Do you know anything?
So, one more thing. So this land that we intend to sell or transfer is really necessary for them to meet their impervious or pervious surface area, and that's the purpose of them doing that. It seems like it's laid out because that piece is necessary.
You are correct. Initially, in our discussions, in the planning work that we did with the engineers, to get the development they wanted on there, they would have needed a variance. They would have had to request a variance for lot coverage. So in our discussions, that is excess land that our Director of Public Works, our electric director, stated they didn't need as long as the easement was maintained. So we worked with Mr. Davison and his team. The council was amenable to that. It is a land sale, but it does assist them in not needing a variance for lot coverage.
It just helps me visualize the need for us to do away or dispose of the land.
Yes, sir. Did I state that correctly, Mr. Davison?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public? Okay, Mr. Bailey.
So my item number 3 is for Bradford Kaufman, located on Pennsylvania Avenue, tax map and parcels 531-13.10-65 and 531-13.10-66. Zoning is R1, low-density residential, and he's requesting a subdivision of 2 lots into 3 lots. These are the existing lots there. I've done my best to outline them. They are former properties of the Allen's hatchery that were sold to someone else. Now he's bought them. There are 2 lots there currently as shown there, and he did submit this survey, and I tried to highlight the proposed property lines the best I could because there's a lot going on there. For 3 lots, and all 3 lots do meet the proposed, the area and bulk requirements for the R1 zone, which is 7,500 square foot minimum with a 75-foot width minimum. And he's shown the outlines there of the buildable, with building setbacks that he'd be permitted to build in. If there's any questions.
Any questions from council?
I have one.
Councilman
Thank
King?
you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mike, can we go back? What size homes are they intending to build on those lots?
He's built several on Market Street, on Pine Street, several
So
on
they're kind of a
others.
small,
They're a small ranch style house, yep.
but nice looking.
1,500,
Yeah.
1,600
Nice
square feet, I
looking,
think,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Other questions from council? Any questions from the public?
One, please.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson.
Is this the property that we recently got an easement for, utility easement on those, on that north-south?
I
Yes.
recall what we did. Yeah, we actually extinguished a small right-of-way.
Yeah.
And you recall correctly, there was a guy wire that, in exchange for extinguishing it, the attorney gave us back an easement for the guy wire.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
that's correct.
Thank you.
You recall correctly.
Okay, thank you. And then next, are we calling up Director Mills? Mr. Mears?
Good evening.
Good evening.
So over a year, maybe a year and a half ago now, I was asked to look into what public citywide trash service would look like. So I reached out to a couple sister communities, one being Georgetown and one being Laurel, and I was able to gather some information. Some of this material or some of these numbers you see in here might be a little dated. I tried to, as far as pricing and things, I tried to update it before today's meeting, but I didn't get responses in time. So one thing we were looking at is this would be an all residential city properties would have weekly trash service. All residential properties would have bi-weekly recycling. All residential properties would have a yard waste pickup. You'll see later there's an actual schedule from the vendor. All residential properties are allowed 1 oversized items per week, mattress, box spring. So you could say, you could put a mattress out 1 week, and then the next week you could put out a box spring. Following week you could put out a couch, etc. It'd be all in one service fee per month from a particular vendor. This alternative could provide a cost reduction potential, I will say potential cost reduction, to the residents depending on the bid prices received, because we will have so many, because it'll be a citywide trash service. We were hoping that the pricing would be less, and then we could then pass that on to the residents, property owners. The citywide service for residential customers would reduce truck traffic in residential neighborhoods and commercial neighborhoods, and result in wear and tear on our roads. Commercial industrial customer services would not be a part of this, so there'd be no change for them. These are some numbers from Georgetown and Laurel. Basically, kind of what I just went over. But they're currently, this was, like I said, probably a year and a half ago so I'm not sure what the numbers are now. But they charge $68 per quarter, or $22.67 a month. With that, like I said, is the yard waste, the bulk items. So their current contract price is $20.46 per month. Again, I just want to say back when I got this information. So they're marking it up or having a profit of about $2.21 per service per month as like their administrative fee. So there is a little bit of revenue to be made. Not saying that this is the only reason we would do this. Laurel is basically the same. They charge $33 a month. So that's about $99 a quarter if you want to look at it quarter-wise. Theirs is a little more. I'm not sure what they were paying. I couldn't figure that out from that information. But anyway, what is nice about their particular vendor is they give you a nice calendar. So you can see what day you actually have trash service, what day you have recycling, what day your yard waste is collected, and holidays as well. And just to touch on that a little bit, we could, when we go out to bid for this, or if we were to go out to bid for this, that is when we put in what service we want, the frequency of the services, what they're to pick up. So we kind of dictate what kind of level of service we're looking for. That will, of course, affect the price, but it's not, I don't think what we're looking for is much different than what these other two towns are already receiving. So I wouldn't expect the price to be too much different. But you never know. So this is currently our leaf and limb policy. We pick up 15-gallon trash bags or smaller, which most of the time they're 50-gallon trash bags. Bags must weigh less than 40 pounds, which never happens. Limbs cut to 6 inches in length and 4 inches around. That barely ever happens. No building materials, no dirt piles or lawn edgings. We get that quite a bit. Limbs to be laid parallel to the curb, occasionally. Items not to be picked up are to be tagged. We try to tag them, do the best we can. Most times we pick it up. Laurel's policy is a lot of the same, but the one thing they don't have with the trash service picking up their leaf and limb is long, large items. So, you know, the 6-foot length items, you know, they just don't do that. I think they're down to 4-foot lengths over there in Laurel. So what we have a problem with is, you know, when whole trees get cut down, you know, where you end up picking up all the limbs for all that. You know, I don't think this service was originally intended for that. You know, I think it was for storm-related debris, or if, you know, you wanted to trim some trees, things like that, but we end up having very large piles. So just a little bit about manpower, because this is kind of what this is about as well, is manpower. So small piles, this is this stuff that one truck, one man is out there 5 days a week picking up, throwing it over the side of the truck, or using a pitchfork for these smaller piles. So like I said, that's 40 hours. Typically when the season is hot and heavy, and even now we're seeing it more even now in the shoulder months in winter, because this is, you know, a pretty fair winter. We've even had larger piles out there this winter. So we typically wait for Fridays to pick those bigger piles up, because as the week goes on, the man in the little truck writes down a list of the big piles, and then on Fridays, we go out, get big piles with one backhoe, typically 2 dump trucks, not 3. There was a time we used to use 3. So 3 to 4 men out of a 7-man department, 1 to 2 days a week. I got 64 hours on there. So total weekly manpower and equipment needed just for the leaf and limb is 104 man-hours spent out of a 280 man-hour week. That's, you know, 7 employees, 40 hours a week. That's 280 weeks. That 280 man-hours, that's where I get that number. So up to 37% of our time of that whole department is just picking up leaf and limb. This department also takes care of your potable water, your sanitary sewer, your streets, your signs, street sweeping, all that sort of thing. With this, I will say too, with this, if we were to go with this service and this yard waste service, the loose leaves would still be picked up by us. October 1st is December 31st. We have the equipment and we would maintain that service. That would not change. All right, so some more man-hour perspective. So currently we're operating on a 280-hour man-hour week, up to 104 man-hours with leaf and limb. Our on-call operator, who does the state-required water testing, sampling, answers all this service calls, things like that during the week, is 40 hours. If we wanted to run the sweeper every day, which would be great, that would be 40 hours. So total 144 man-hours on street maintenance a week, plus the on-call operator of 40 is 184 man-hours a week. So that leaves 96 man-hours a week to operate and maintain the water, sewer, and streets for the city of Seaford. So this equates to 2.2 employees for a 5-day week. So I'm down to 2.2 employees to do all those other services. These are just typical pictures. Yeah, everybody's seen them. If you ride through town, you see it. So what I will say this, these are piles that we want to get away from. You know, these are piles we end up picking up. This, I think, is more what it's intended for, the pile on the left. You know, pile on the left, a couple bags, couple piles and bags on the right. So this is our leaf and limb disposal area. It doesn't look like this now because we did spend about $30,000, I think it was 2 years ago. Got it ground up and got the bags moved to the back. But it does need continued maintenance. Another year or so, I'll have to get it pushed back again. At a cost of probably another $30,000. Cleanup week. So we budget 20 grand, $20,000. We typically collect over 250 tons of trash. This past year required approximately 600 man-hours to complete that work. You know, cleanup week is no longer cleanup week. The city has grown. We're into a 6-day operation of just picking up, and then another day or so or 2 of loading dumpsters and disposing of the actual trash. So just 600 man-hours times minimum wage of $15 an hour is $9,000. We have numerous locations where items are brought into the city from out of town. There's no real way to enforce that. Unsightly piles and unwanted people rummaging through the piles are created by the current way we manage this service. With trash vendors collecting weekly bulk items, there would not be a need for cleanup week, now as we know it, which we all love. This service is taken advantage of, and there's no real way or real easy way for us to police it. You know, we very rarely are we told that someone is seen bringing something in, and then if it is, it's hard to really enforce it. Because what are you going to, you know, we tell them, we have told them in the past that, hey, we don't believe it came from here. You know, why do you have 17 mattresses? And they end up just not removing it. So the best thing for us to do for the city's benefit, I think, is just to pick it up and clean it and get rid of it while we have the dumpsters on site. There's a few pictures. I won't go into the people. say like, okay, there's 4 toilets there at one house and a bunch of mattresses. So, there's household trash on the left, which is not supposed to be. There's couches sitting in the middle of a vacant lot. It's just things that it's taken advantage of. So we just proposed a few options for cleanup week. Revise the list of items that we pick up to large items only. Those big bulky items that maybe you can't bring, or even if you have a personal trash service that maybe you don't want to dispose of there, or you don't want to drag to the dump. So maybe we just do that. Possibly only picking up from owner-occupied properties, no rentals. Offer a semi-annual call-in system, where a couple times a year that they call in, work orders created, and we go and pick it up. I see that potentially as being laborious, as you see our man-hour depiction earlier. So this would limit the amount of trash sitting at the curbs, making the city look unsightly, and this would eliminate the trash coming in and out of city limits. So we were looking for different options basically for cleanup week. We still are. So some discussion points for the whole thing is that all residential properties will have a trash service. These are pros. This should help keeping properties clean. Leaf and limb will be completed by a vendor, and this service would be included in the cost of trash pickup, which would provide the Public Works Department more man hours for other tasks. A lot of other things that we need to do, more important things. It would be like hiring 2.3 more employees, 104 man hours for the department to do the needed task. Street sweeping is the first thing to go. If we got other things going on, the streets just do not get swept. Just do not have the manpower for it. And, keeping the roads swept every day would be great, and really is a noticeable thing that the city needs. Less leaf and limb sitting at the curb, causing an unsightly appearance. Eliminate the need to maintain the leaf and limb disposal area. Bulk items would be picked up by the trash vendor weekly. Possible elimination of cleanup week, which would provide us with more man hours for other tasks. Repeat, I guess I must think that's important. No large piles sitting at the curbs causing an unsightly appearance. No trash brought in from out of town, and a little bit of additional revenue. Cons. Oh, skip right by that. Not every property owner will want to pay for a trash service. We will have to administer the trash program and budget for the delinquency. Big changes to the amount and type of leaf and limb the property owners can dispose of. No doubt about it, it'd be a big change. Big changes to the cleanup week format as far as quantity and type of debris they can dispose of. So I kind of ran through that quickly because you've all seen it before, but I'm hoping that there'll be some questions we can answer.
Well, just to sort of summarize what you've said in that lengthy presentation, we've been looking at this for several years now because of cleanup week has become overwhelming, bleeding into every employee of the city participating to get it done, and it's taking now a week and a half, 2 weeks. With that said, though, cleanup week is probably our most appreciated service that we offer as a city, so no one wants to do away with cleanup week. So that's how this whole conversation started, was cleanup week. There's been options thrown out around that with a central drop-off area 3-4 times a year to a monthly call-in designated work order, which I'll say happens to be my favorite. But the idea is not only to change the service, but to make the service better, but make it more manageable for the city, to keep our city clean, and so the residents still have that service. This backed into the idea of trash. Trash was never the target, never something the city wanted to take over, and probably like a lot of you, we're scared to take over trash, to be honest, to create that change. But the reality is that a centralized trash company could offer all of those services, leaf and limb, and a monthly cleanup, which would be a benefit to our residents, and the prices we have seen so far have been comparable. There are those at this table that currently don't have a trash service, so we fully understand that side of that we'd have to think about this. But this is a public comment time. That's why we're bringing it to the public. For those that aren't here tonight and have a thought about this, positive or negative, we would love to hear from you, either through email or a phone call. Because that's the point of this tonight. We're not voting on this. We're trying to gather as much information. We want to make the wisest decision with the taxpayers' money to keep our city clean, to provide the services. And that's what tonight's about, is to get input. We have heard this presentation so many times. I think everybody at this table now could give this presentation, but it's a tough decision. And but that's why we're here. We're supposed to make tough decisions. So first, I'm going to ask for any questions or comments from the council. Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Burley, just to go back and touch a little bit about integrating the cleanup service into the trash pickup. So reaching out to the cities around us, the ones that are doing it. So if I understand the program correctly, there's no additional cost, right? So if you've got a mattress and you need a mattress picked up, right? It's something you can stick out on the curb and they'll come through and pick that up.
Correct.
There's no scheduling of that, right? So with the schedule they provide saying, hey, we're doing these tasks on these days, and as the homeowner, you can say, hey, well, today's pickup day, and I can go put this item out, right? And just to reiterate what the mayor said, the cost that I've seen for the companies that are willing to do this service is cheaper than what I'm currently paying for the trash service that I have.
Right.
So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yep. Yep. What you say seems to be correct from the information I've gathered. They allow one bulk item per week to be picked up. So you could theoretically get rid of 52 bulk items a year at no extra cost.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from council? Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we were to go down this route with implementing a citywide trash service, would residents have the option to opt out in order, you know, if they are sharing trash cans with their neighbors? Is that a possibility?
Ultimately, that would be up to you guys up here. I will just say that the two other towns that I spoke to do not allow opt-outs, because it gets a little harder to administer, and then it also kind of defeats the purpose if you're truly trying to keep one vendor in town and keep your city clean. But that is a possibility.
The other challenge would be, what if you want to opt out of trash, but you still want leaf and limb and the cleanup, right? So that would complicate it. Maybe not impossible, but it certainly could complicate it.
That leads to my second question, the leaf and limb cleanup. So right now, whenever people put if they put stuff that is bigger than what the requirements are, we pick it up anyways, or you guys pick it up anyways. If the trash service does not pick up the leaf and limbs, if they're too big, would the cities be able to come by and pick it up?
No, I think the hope would be that only what is required by the trash service or accepted by the trash service would be picked up. So that's the big learning curve, and that's the big change to it all. We just got to a point where we started picking. Now, we don't pick up everything. We still do tag things that are just unacceptable, and we don't pick them up. And we work with the owner, for them to understand and then dispose of it themselves. So I'm not 100% accurate when I say we pick up everything. Kind of being facetious, but we pick up a lot of borderline things just because it's easier to do that. Sometimes the residents truly just don't know, that there is even a policy. So we pick it up, or we'll pick it up and say, hey, let's not do it again. But by that time, they've already cut the big tree down. So the hope is to get away from all that.
Would it be a possibility for residents to call in those types of, whenever they do have a large amount of limbs and large-sized items, would it be manageable for you guys if someone was to call it in?
So again, I think that it was the policy was never really made or intended to pick up all that stuff. I think and I wasn't here back when the policy was made, way before me, and I've been here a while. But You know, it's for if a storm comes through, knocks a few branches down, if you're trimming your trees, you know, if you're cutting your grass, and you have grass clippings, you know, raking up some leaves, things like that. I don't think it's, or pulling a bush or two. You know, I don't know that it was ever intended if you're gonna totally re-landscape your yard and pull out every bush in your yard, but we get that a lot. You know, they cut down a 60-foot tree and we're picking up all, you know, I don't know that it was ever meant for that. But anything's possible.
Other questions from council? Councilman Henderson?
I think there needs to be a lot more work done. I understand the manpower shortage that you have that, well, let me rephrase it. I understand the immense amount of work that the Public Works Department has to accomplish. And if it's going to take 104 hours a week to do the job, shouldn't we investigate subcontracting leaf and limb? As if we're spitballing here, we over the last 2 council meetings, we approved landscaping on High Street and citywide landscaping in all our parks. Why couldn't we consider doing citywide leaf and limb? And that would free your people up. There's a number of other things. There's some smart people in the room. That's just one idea. I like the idea of a centralized cleanup week. It would dramatically reduce out-of-town garbage coming in. And there's very few people that I talk to that want to give up their own trash service or want to be forced to have a trash service. Everybody has their choice, their market choice of vendors. So I think we need to do a lot more work before we commit to anything. And I realize this is a public hearing, but we should be pretty exhaustive about these other options. I would agree that cleanup week once a year is kind of untenable because was it second week of May?
Yes.
Right, so second week of May. After the second week of May, everybody saves all their large items in their backyards or on their front porches or wherever it is for the rest of the year until it comes around again. So should we consider a cleanup, a more frequent cleanup week or a different way of setting it out? Because, I mean, I received, cleanup week, I received numerous complaints about people advancing their items out into the street weeks before the actual cleanup. And it blocked off street parking for days and weeks before the stuff got picked up. And then you clean up the area. You know, it's advertised, it's communicated. Your area is going to be Wednesday. And then that all gets cleaned up, and then on Thursday, there's other large piles in that same area. You got to go back because these folks aren't following instructions. So I think there's a lot of I think to have personal accountability, if you want to throw a large item away several times a year, that we could have centralized dumpsters so that people could take their own initiative rather than hauling a mattress or an appliance to the landfill. They could dispose of it at no perceived cost. We all pay for it in our street charge. To take it to a dumpster that's monitored. If there's more than one site around town, so be it. But I think that a hybrid of those things or some combination of those things is really what we need to be looking at instead of a single vendor.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Comments from the public? Mr. Vane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris Vane, 133 North Pine Street. Thank you for all your work. It's obvious that you put in a lot of time. I see the code enforcement problem, is what I see. If we have rules for leaf and limb pickup, trash pickup, so forth and so on. Enforce the rules. It's that simple. As far as large items are concerned, again, I go back to code. If people are collecting large items and it's obvious, they're either out in front of their home, on the porch, side yard, backyard, code should be looking at that, and they should be notifying the owners that this is not acceptable. I think that would solve some of the burden here. The other thing is consumer choice, which Councilman Henderson just alluded to. I like my trash service. I don't want to give it up. I think the city has got a lot of burden on their shoulders right now as far as code enforcement and law enforcement. I don't think they need to be taking on these issues and making it more complicated than what it already is. I think you're asking for trouble and a customer service fiasco. My opinion, but I just see that as real potential there. You guys don't need it. So I agree with Councilman Henderson's comments. I think it's thoughtful. I think maybe a hybrid approach might work, but code enforcement has got to happen. And if you need more resources for code enforcement, you need to find them. Thank you,
sir. Any other, Mr. Bradley?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'll speak briefly because, first of all, I don't have trash pickup. For the past 25 years, the back of my vehicle stinks one day a week because I pay for it in another town. Something I want you to be aware of, though. During the past 18 months, the trash company has issued to me and other businesses an 18% fuel surcharge on their trash pickup, which doesn't seem like a lot, but you multiply it by a year, it's a considerable amount of money. In my experience over the past 30 years, once a business puts a fuel surcharge on something, it never goes away. And believe me, some items I'm paying up to $100 per seat for getting them to my store. It's been absolutely ridiculous. So in your research, please pin them down on their pricing because it's a means of getting around it to increase the cost for the residents of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Short?
Thank you, Dale Short, Boyce Road, Seaford. There's a lot of good points being brought up tonight on both sides. My units, I got some rental properties. My tenants are all satisfied with the service they have. And they play by the rules. They don't put nothing out over 6 feet long. If they do, I get on them. They don't pile trash up a week to 2 weeks before cleanup. It is a mess. It's out of control. 15 years ago, I put a house up in Seaford. I bought a lot, had trees on it. I had to clean the lot to put the house up, and I called the city, and I said, you know, how much can I put on the street? Short limbs. Anything else was up to me to remove. I thought that was reasonable. So that's what I did. But I don't see other people doing it these days. They just keep pushing. And I think we need to play by the rules a little more. And what I don't like, there's no guarantee on what the price is gonna be. I got a good price with my carrier, and the tenant pays it, but I can't speak for these other carriers. So, I think we need to really look at what's going on.
Agreed. Any other folks that want to speak for public comment on this matter?
Yes.
Is that you, Mr. Cannon?
As Mr. Mears said, this has been a topic of conversation for several years. But it seems the current initiative for change seems to be primarily driven by problems around the current cleanup week, called increasingly unmanageable. Mayor and City Council need to be wary of allowing what I call the tail wagging the dog for change. If cleanup week could be successfully modified, as several people have suggested, to become manageable. Nevertheless, if overall wholesale changes are deemed desirable, including one vendor service, then the elimination of cleanup week, there should be some basic tenets that you adhere to and think about that must be part of it. First, citizens must receive equal or better services than current, not a reduction in services. Services must be user-friendly. This reference to a learning curve where people have to adapt to a new regime, for me, that's not user-friendly. That's, we demand that you do this because we do. Services must be affordable at least, or I say at least or less than current cost. Personally, I find it very difficult to believe that the town of Georgetown or Laurel or whatever has the services that Burley outlined, including the pickup of large items without extra charges. Our current system is about $80 or $90 a quarter, and any large items from the private haulers are very expensive, $35, $45, $85 for a queen-size mattress. So maybe the scale of one hauler might account for that, but I do find it very difficult to believe. And I think that the services must also continue to encourage responsible resource conservation. So as Mr. Mears said, we need to maintain at least weekly household trash waste removal and disposal, at least, as far as I'm concerned, weekly household recycling removal and disposal, at least monthly removal and disposal of large household or private property waste recycle items, with one vendor for weekly household trash, recycling, and large item removal and disposal. One fee for weekly household trash, recycling, large item removal and disposal, and a vendor fee calculated on a monthly basis and administered by the City of Seaford as part of the monthly customer bills. I'm worried that people are not going to be able to afford it. Let's say that, just for hypothetically say that the typical city utility bill is about $175. Break it down to water and sewer, electricity, road charge, so on and so forth. Adding a $30 or more fee per month is going to put some people in a real pinch, my opinion. If there is a contract for a particular vendor, it should be enforced for a year at least. Be the lowest bid from a demonstrated or proven reliable vendor. And do have some contract provisions that allow for both increases and decreases in fees depending on particularly the real variables, including the percentage change in fuel costs. You can't have a guy that's trying to run a business where the fuel costs go up 10%, and every time he sends a truck out, he loses 1%. It's not going to work. As far as yard waste collection and disposal, it seems to me the current leaf and limb yard waste removal by the city is working well. If a private vendor were to do this, I guess there are. Then it have to be without additional financial or other burdens. It have to be continuous year-round with demand as determined by the city. And at least as good as current city standards and practices, especially for bulky yard waste items, tree trimmings, bush trimmings, down limbs, leaves, etc. And a special note about cleanup week. As currently held, cleanup week does allow for free disposal of some items that may not be acceptable for the regular disposal outfits, except for the pricey extra charges. Such items might include old furniture, old broken appliances, machines, bedding, etc. Mr. Milligan's suggestion about having identifying a number of trouble sites for cleanup week and focus on those for enforcement, whether you call it code or whatever. And that if you have a couple of or several large dumpsters in strategic areas that people could use that are monitored, it might cut down a lot on people just piling things up all over the place. I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Mr. Mayor, we have 2 comments that have come in through our YouTube feed with
Okay.
regard to this item. The first one is from Corrine Collins Spiller. This individual states, I would think the city has enough to do. Private vendors will create less problems. Once a year, one day is not enough for large items and need more study. And then following that, Moses Emmanuel Rivas agreed with the statement prior to. So those are the 2 that have come in through our YouTube
All
feed.
right, thank you. Anyone else here for public comment? Again, we're discussing this. There's no vote on this. We're trying to gather as much ideas. I think all the ideas are good. A combination of several. It's going to be a blended. I think each one here has agreed that whatever we do will be a slow roll. But we're going to have to take a swing at cleanup week in a different format in some way. That'll be, I would suggest, would be this council's first choice. We got to do something different this year, just so the public is, we're clear on this. Cleanup week will be as it has always been. And maybe our citizens will be more aware and we'll have our eyes open a little bit more to see what's going on. Maybe we'll have more code enforcement or some suggested areas to look at. But again, if you didn't feel comfortable standing up and you would rather just call or send an email to say, hey, here's my suggestion, we do want to hear from everybody. This will come back up at some later date as we gather some. We've been going fairly slow with this. This has not been a quick move. I know some people think we just want to change for change's sake, but that's not the case at all. We're trying to review every idea, possibility to make things better, to keep the service great, but we want to make sure that we do the right thing. So, Councilman Santos, did you have anything you wanted to add before we close the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Tonight at this meeting, I didn't see a lot of people, besides the people that were online, comment about the trash pickup service being their preferred choice. But I have been asking, it's been one of my number 1 questions over the past several months to community members, and I walked around the whole city and knocked on every door, and I looked at it. I got to see a lot of houses, and I saw a lot of it is one of the comments that they brought up, that it is code enforcement. I believe that is true, but it also having only one time a week where people can dispose of trash, that's not a good way of keeping a city clean. Number one, we've been addressing a lot of the top concerns of the constituents, but having a cleaner city was one of the main topics, and given the residents the opportunity to make that happen, I think we should really, it's one of the main reasons why I believe that we should consider going having moving away from just going the way that Mayor's is proposing. Okay.
All right, again, the public, please send us your comments. Again, nothing's happening quickly on this, but over time we want to get as many comments, and we'll bring this back to City Council at some future date. Mr. Mears, save your notes, and we'll bring it back up. So with that, we're going to close our public hearing. We'll reopen our regular meeting. I'll call Mr. Bailey up. That maybe is one of our longest public hearings we've had, isn't it? So, but good input. Appreciate everybody sharing. Appreciate it.
So we'll go back to public hearing number 1 for the findings of facts. The project was the Bel Air rezoning. The owners are Bel Air Investments LLC. Property location was Chatham Drive. Tax map and parcels 531-10.00-407.00 through 414.00. Current zoning is R1 low density residential, and the proposed zoning is R3 high density residential. The current R3 area adjacent to that is around 10 acres, and they're proposed adding 1.5 acres to that R3. And it did require, we asked them to go to DelDOT for the main road entrance. I believe we did get a letter of no objection to this proposal. And Planning and Zoning did make a favorable recommendation to council on February 2nd with the consideration for the parking.
Okay, with that, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor?
I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to deny the request of Bel Air Investments LLC to rezone 8 single-family lots from R1 low-density residential zoning to R3 high-density residential zoning. Tax map and parcel number 531-10.10, strike that, let me start over. 531-100.00-407.00 through 414.00 to accommodate the proposed building of 12 townhome units and a community building as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? All right, with that, we're going to do a roll call vote. Councilman Henderson?
I vote no. The units are within compliance. However, I don't believe that it's in the best interest of the community as a whole.
Okay. Councilman Santos?
I vote no due to the parking concerns. We don't want to double down.
Okay. Councilman King?
I vote no because of I feel there's a lot of underlying issues that have not been resolved, and I don't feel that it's in betterment of our community, so I vote no.
Councilman McCoy?
I vote no. I believe there's current safety concern for the public. I think we need to address those before moving forward with any proposal.
And Councilman Holland?
I vote no also, based on the parking issue.
Okay, so that one's denied.
Point
Yes,
of
sir.
order. I think I may have confused the matter. We have voted no to deny. So,
We got a double negative? So do you want to clarify that,
I would like to clarify that.
please?
I vote in favor of motion B to deny because I do not feel it is in the best interest
you.
of the community.
Okay. So we have a motion to deny. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Okay, any questions on this motion? With that, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Henderson?
Aye. Based on the units do conform per planning and zoning, however, it is not in the best interest of the community.
Okay. Councilman Santos?
Aye, due to the parking concerns that have been raised.
Councilman King?
Aye, based on the underlying issues that haven't been resolved, and I don't feel it's the betterment for our community.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye, based on current safety considerations for the public.
And Councilman Holland?
And I vote aye to deny, based on the facts of the parking situation that was presented tonight.
Okay, so it has been denied. Okay. Thank you. All right, item number 2.
Public hearing number 2, findings of facts. The project is Balsamo preliminary site plan. The owner is Balsamo Real Estate LLC. Property is located on North Market Street Extended. Tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.14. The zoning is C2 highway commercial, and they're proposing 2 commercial buildings with an accessory building in the back. They had to clarify that definition. It's not a warehouse for that. They're providing 27 parking spaces and 25 are required, and they will require additional approvals from State Fire Marshal, Sussex Conservation, City Engineer for Stormwater. Planning and Zoning made a favorable recommendation for approval on February 2nd.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, I make the motion to approve the request of Balsamo Real Estate LLC for a preliminary site plan approval for the construction of 2 commercial buildings and 1 warehouse building to be located on North Market Street, Extended, tax map and parcel 331-5.00-4.14, Zone C2 Highway Commercial District as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that second.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Any questions on this motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman King?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Santos?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Henderson?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Okay, it's unanimous. It passed. All right, number 3.
Public hearing item number 3, findings of facts. The project is Brad Kaufman's subdivision. The owner is Brad Kaufman. Property is located on Pennsylvania Avenue. Tax map and parcel 531-13.10-65.00 and 531-13.10-66.00. The zoning is R1 low density residential. He's proposing 3 residential lots, subdividing 2 lots into 3 lots. And the proposed lots do meet the area and bulk requirements for the R1 zone, that being a 7,500 square foot minimum and a 75-foot width minimum. Planning and Zoning made a favorable recommendation to council on February 2nd.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, I make the motion to approve the request of Bradford Kaufman to subdivide 2 lots into 3 lots located on Pennsylvania Avenue, tax map parcel 531-13.10-65.00 and 531-13.10-66.00, zone R1 low density residential as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Are there any questions on the motion? Now we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman McCoy?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman King?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Henderson?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Councilman Santos?
Yes, based on findings of facts.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bailey, very much. All right, new business number 1, we're calling in the police chief.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
Vice Mayor, Council Members, City Manager.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time. I have a quick presentation, promise. Somebody clapped. So, several years ago, I spoke to the City Manager and our Vice Mayor, Police Liaison, about coming up with a program, a cadet program, a seasonal program, to help, number 1, augment some of our staffing to get increased presence, because increased presence does result in public safety and quality of life issues that we can address. Foot patrols, bicycle patrols that we're just not able to get out there on at this current time. A cadet program can also lead to a feeder program for the police department. This would consist of up to 4 cadets per our conversation with the city manager. And what I did is I had June Merritt, our financial director, give us a breakdown, just as an example. At $17 an hour, 20 hours per week for 20 weeks, you can see the breakdown. The total would be $7,746.56. That's if they work 20 hours. In addition to that cost for that season, we have additional costs for psychological exams, drug screenings, and physicals, because we want to do our due diligence similar to that of hiring a police officer, because they're going to have access to certain types of information. That total would be $1,737 per cadet. So we estimate hiring one cadet would cost us between $9,484, counting their testing, working 20 hours per week for 20 weeks, to $13,357. That's if they were to work up to 29 hours per week. City manager and myself had a conversation. There may very well plenty of work for them to do. And if they're available and we could work them, that will be your cost per person. For total cadets would be a range of $37,936 to $53,428. Obviously, this is just a fraction of the cost of one officer. We're not paying benefits and things of that nature. They are covered with workers' comp. They are similar to Rehoboth PD cadets, Bethany Beach cadets, seasonal officers, as well as Dewey Beach. The Council on Police Training has implemented more stringent requirements for training. It's probably going to be somewhere about 120 hours total. COPT requires somewhere around 84 hours. This does include bicycle training. It includes training for the officers to actually be able to transport a prisoner for a low-lying misdemeanor, nonviolent offender if we needed them to. They could handle shoplifting complaints. They could also issue city ordinance violations. They could issue parking violations, which is a big thing around the city. We are working on that ourselves with our officers right now. In addition to that, there could be another set of eyes and ears for code enforcement to address some of these other violations. On this last slide, before I close, some of the things that I just covered are listed up here. They would also help out with our recruiting events, taking calls by teleserve, freeing police officers up to deal with more pressing violent offenses or presence in other areas that are experiencing that. In addition to traffic control and special events. We do a number of bicycle rodeos. These will be certified officers or cadets that could help out with those, so we can still maintain a community engagement presence. And we plan on partnering with the Rehoboth Beach Police Department to attend this training. We would send one of our certified officers, maybe not the same one each time, but we would help out in the training process. We would certainly have to help out with patrol procedures. So I have a list. I don't know if you really want me to go into it, but it really starts around mid to late April is when this training starts, and it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 3 weeks. And then the following weekend is bicycle training. So if the council approves this tonight, we would certainly need to jump out, get this posted immediately. These are folks 18 to 21 years of age. As you can see, the whole goal is presence, safety, quality of life, but also a feeder program for the police department that they could transfer right into it.
Yes, sir. All right, any questions for the chief? Yeah, Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I think it's a fantastic idea. My oldest son actually participated in this program and then graduated from the University of Delaware with his degree in criminal justice. So his intentions going to school was being a police officer. So with this cadet program, if we bring them in, we spend a lot of money, some money training them, recruiting them, getting them ready, possibly to go into a career of law enforcement. Is there anything that the city could do with that investment, saying, hey, we've got an opportunity for you at our police department? I mean, is there any thought around that, if it kind of makes sense, right? So if you got this investment in this individual that made a decision that they want to go into law enforcement as a career, at the end of the day, if the training's all done, the academy's completed, they say, well, hey, you know what, I appreciate you, but I'm going to go work in Greenwood. I'm going to go work at Rehoboth. I want to go work at, which is great, but I'm just saying, you know, at the expense of the city of Seaford, if that makes sense.
So if I understood, I apologize. If I understood, after we train them and they work with us for 20 weeks, they could decide to go to work as a police officer if they're 20 and a half years old, go into a police academy, graduate by the time they're 21. Absolutely, and it happens every day. Matter of fact, we're the benefactor of some of that from Bethany and from Rehoboth. I've hired multiple people from that, and I will do it every day, twice on Sunday.
But I'm saying, is there anything we can entice and add to that? You know what I mean? And say, hey, we want you to stay here. We got an opportunity for you. If that makes sense,
I hope so.
I don't know if there's a contract, if there's a letter of intent, if there's, I don't know what that looks like. I'm just.
So I don't see us being able to do a contract where they have to stay with us and have to join our force if we do this. Quite frankly, they're doing us a favor, and we're doing them one in return. They're getting on-the-job training. I mean, they're handling things that are just really a step below what a police officer does, but they're getting 100 and some hours versus 1,000, 1,500 hours of training. You know, so they're closely monitored. It is somewhat of a supervisory role, right? Because we still have to monitor them. We still have to make sure that they're following the rules. They have to carry a radio. They're going to get trained on OC spray, a baton. They're going to be calling in different things. They're going to have the authority to actually use a laptop and write a citation and ordinance violations and things of that nature. I hope that when they get to our department, they're going to see the technology. They're going to see the professionalism. We have the training. We have the right folks, I think, in place. I think that this would be something that they're going to see they can be part of.
Yeah, it's a great feeder. I mean, it's a great program. I just, at the end of the day, it's kind of like training a meat cutter, right? I trained a meat cutter, an apprentice cutter, meat cutter, and then at the end of the day, hey, thank you for the training, but this guy's paying me $5 more an hour, so I'll see you later.
I'm a product of a seasonal. I was a seasonal officer for the city or town of Dewey Beach back in, well, let's just say the early 80s, before I went into the military. And I trained at Rehoboth, though. They did this before Dewey trained. And I have a long history of family that have done the same thing. And I can tell you it was a struggle for me to come from western Sussex to drive over to Dewey Beach. I probably spent more money than I made knowing I was going into the military at the end of the summer, if I'm being honest. This gives our kids right here in our city an opportunity to do something that they may not otherwise have, because they pay $18 an hour at Dewey, Bethany, and Rehoboth, if not 19. We came in with 17 because that's a fairly good range. I mean, it keeps us right in the ballpark, but if they live here, and the whole goal, I want folks from the city of Seaford. They're a melting pot. We can be a very reflective of our community. If we can get our children that are in the community to be here and work here, it's going to cost them little to no dollars versus driving to Rehoboth or Bethany or Dewey.
Yep.
And I think it's a great opportunity for the city and the department. And,
Councilman McCoy?
I'm just spitballing here, Chief.
Yes, sir.
To Councilman King's point, I feel like this program would mesh well with college-age students. And when they are home for a semester after the spring, this would be a program that would fit their schedule, so to speak. Various scholastic programs at a college level, you have to have certain training. If you go in education, you have to be in a classroom for a certain amount of hours, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any knowledge about criminal justice, but I don't know if there's a way that you can mesh a program that would work hand in hand with what they're learning at a Del Tech, Del State, University of Delaware Parallel, where they could, I don't know, if there's hours they have to meet or things of that nature. I don't know if that would work, or if there's something that you have knowledge about.
I do. Actually, we have partnered with the Delaware State University for 3 years now. We've had an intern every year. We introduced one of the young ladies here just this past season, and I think she is teetering on whether she wants to be a police officer or not, that or being a lawyer. And I tell them, you got to be a cop to be a good lawyer. I mean, so I'm trying to encourage her. But yes, so this might be something that can expand at some point where we do it for 20 weeks. Kids go back to school when they come home on break. If we want to try to retain those folks to come here for an employer, perhaps we can get the city to approve block another hours during that spring break period for a couple weeks, because they're going to still have the training that's good for a year. And there's certain things that we don't have to do every year if they keep coming back. So it's could be a cost saver. So absolutely. Del Tech also, I think Sussex Tech, I apologize. Every year since I've been here, we've had a student intern. Every year. But we haven't had a position like this where we could hire them. I think we could have got folks to do it. So I think it's a great opportunity for Sussex Tech, Del State kids that live in this area, and kids just now graduating that are 18 to 21 years of age.
One more question, I'm sorry. If somebody's interested, how do they actually apply? What's the method?
This gets approved, we're going to start advertising tomorrow. We were just at a recruiting event at Del Tech just Saturday. There's another Del Tech recruiting event coming up that we're going to go to. It's free. That last one cost us a few dollars. We have joined what's called Handshake. It's a national program, and our recruitment can go out to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Delaware. Maryland's the only one I'm not sure about, and some other states around. So we can put out there, we're hiring, here's our flyer, here's what we're hiring for, not just police officers, but also cadets. And so we're hoping that maybe that'll help spur some things as well. Just one more promise.
I noticed, I read that Blades was hiring, and the reason I'm asking, I noticed they advertise certified and uncertified. Does that can you explain what that is to me,
Sure, we do it too, and we've hired a few since I've been here. So you can hire a certified police officer under our current collective bargaining agreement. at a patrolman first class. So if they've got 2 years of law enforcement experience, we can hire them as a patrolman first class. They get paid a little bit higher on the scale because they're, instead of patrolman at zero at entry level, they
So
go
they're
PSC.
currently in the field?
We can get them trained and on the road within 2 to 4
Okay.
weeks versus 9 months.
Okay.
To a year.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And Chief, just to clarify, you keep using the term young people or younger people, but
I'm
there
old,
is,
so
there
everybody's
is no
young.
age limit on this, correct?
So 18 to 21, absolutely. So
Okay,
at
so
age
there's-
21, it's time to give the other folks that are 18, 19, 20 a chance. So you either want to be a police officer at that point or you don't. It gives them a chance to, kind of like on-the-job training, ride-along programs. They're using the equipment, they're getting the training, they're handling minor arrests, shoplifting complaints, lease reports, which is learning how to write field service and actual criminal reports as well, low-lying offenses, although it may be. And they would always work in pairs. I mean, so they're learning to do some of that patrol-related stuff. They're seeing how we're actually gauging them too. Can they engage with the community? How do they treat the community, right? So,
Very good.
so yeah.
Well, there was a couple guys on the back row. I thought you might be able to get an application before you left.
That's a
why I was-
volunteer program. We're accepting
I
volunteers.
thought maybe you were thinking about different, I thought maybe you were thinking about different career.
Okay, if there are no other questions for the chief, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Chief of Police, Marshall Kraft, to implement a cadet program at the City of Seaford Police Department as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Councilman King, I'll second the motion.
King seconds. Are there any questions on this motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Look forward to it, Chief. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for bringing this
One more
forward.
plug, since there's folks watching. We're hiring cadets. Contact me at the police department.
All right, next we'll call up Mr. Perlmutter with the residents at River Place and other things downtown.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Evening.
Council,
Good evening.
Evening.
City Manager. Whew, that was a long meeting. Just beginning. Mike, I'm David Perlmutter, by the way, with residents of River Place and Seaford Development, and we're here before you tonight to bring in front of you a proposed plan that will be a public-private partnership with the city and the Chesapeake Conservancy, who did a wonderful job with the Oyster House project, the park. I know Phase 1 has been completed, and it's beautiful what you all have done down on the riverfront. This is the original plan up here. The walk, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. I walked it today with a few people, and it's just really nice down there. We've been meeting with representatives. There's a representative here tonight, but I'm not going to get into that this second. I'm going to have my architect speak a little bit much more about the plans and what we hope to do. We hope you like what we want to do, and we believe this is really the game changer for Seaford with what both properties, what we can do to that waterfront and the Riverwalk. We think it's something that truly will enable not just the community here in Seaford, but those around Seaford to benefit from this. It's definitely, my group's committed, as I think you're aware. We've done a lot of development downtown. We're not from Seaford, we're not from Delaware, but we've invested a lot of our money here. We plan to invest a lot more money here, but we think this partnership, public-private partnership with the city and through the help of the Chesapeake Conservancy, we think that the plan we're going to bring before you tonight really is something that will be on the forefront for small towns in Delaware, the Milford, the Laurels that have waterfront, and even towns, small towns across the country. I think we've come up with something that is really going to be a game changer for this town. It needs it. You guys have done a wonderful job with the Nylon Center and getting that approved and purchased. I just think with everything going on now in Seaford, the timing, the commitment from the local, the county, the state, and the federal government, everyone's got their eye now on Seaford, and they realize what's here and what we can accomplish. And I don't want to belabor it. I will come back at the end and, give a little something. But my architect's here, Keith Fisher, will really talk about the plans in more detail. There's representatives here from the Conservancy. And my builder's here if there were any questions from the builder. Our real estate people are here to tell you what our renters want in downtown Seaford and what Seaford needs in general. So if there's any of that, we have a whole team here that can answer questions for you. But I'd like Keith Fisher to come up and discuss further what our hopes are.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Charles, how are you all? That might be the least amount of words I've ever heard David Perlmutter speak in front of a microphone ever, so I'm a little shocked by that. So what you see is what you've seen previously that was submitted as an approved plan, and what we've been able to do in the way the timing all works with the phasing of what the developer has done over at River Place and the success that they've had over there. We've brought that over across and refocused the attention on what was the power plant site. And looking at that site, thinking about a more global approach than just simply, hey, let's just put some more apartments up and let's go. We all know that would be successful given the history of what's been developed. Thinking about it in more of a big picture and developing a relationship with the Conservancy group and what could make both elements of this better and more special. We looked at it, and again, this is meant as no disrespect to the plan you see, but in everything, you look at opportunities to grow and be a little bit better. If we were to be able to take some of the highlights that you see on this plan, and if you want to, I don't know how to control this thing, I'm going to shut it off, I guess. Move it to the next plan. So this would give you sort of an overall big picture view. To the far, as I'm standing here, to the far right is what we know as River Place 1, 2, 3, and eventually 4 as they kind of go up the river and towards the hospital. Then flowing to the left, building number A is what we propose there as it sits where the power plant site is. We're essentially looking at this plan and saying, let's flip what was approved previously, bringing a lot more of the public elements of the outdoor amphitheater, the Oyster House Recreational Center, bringing them closer towards what we would think would be closer towards more of the retail central core of the downtown, as opposed to where it was sort of more spread out, making a more conscious effort to promote pedestrian connectivity, circling back and forth between all those spaces that you see, bringing more population walking to the downtown on High Street where a lot of those businesses already are. Part of the developer's plan in this case would be to also have a commercial component to Building A at the ground level that could be a restaurant that would serve as an ability to function and facilitate and manage those sort of public events at that amphitheater. And then what you'll see here in this plan is really a fusion of the early plan that you saw previously, taking our plan, putting them together. A lot of the similar notes and things and the hard work that the Conservancy had already accomplished, we've brought those things back into play. You'll see again from plan left moving up, the connectivity of sort of the kayak and launch and the boat areas and the dock and the river walk, that kind of all will stay the same, but then a nice park with native plantings and the pathways that move and sort of connect. So that's an overview, if you will, of what we're talking about. in this plan, short-circuiting a lot of the effort that the groups previous to us have done and the legwork they did to create some of those more park elements. But again, what we see here is an opportunity to bring it together and bring all that effort more close to the downtown and treating this riverfront truly as a true destination that would promote mixed use, that would promote all those things that would bring more of that positive and population elements to where we would be. Good. I had to get my passing grade.
And that's initially along the Riverwalk. We do have a lot of other property that we're going to have future phases on property we own. Up at Pine Street, South Pine, there's some darkened areas where we hope to have some retail shops along High Street there. On the site is a very, as you're aware, I mean, there's ups and downs. It's not just like going out into a field and starting to build. I mean, there's going to be retaining walls all over the site, but sewer relocations and things like that, massive retaining walls. But this, you know, we believe this plan, it's absolutely, this is the bullseye. You know, when we acquired this property years ago from the city, we knew in our minds that this power plant was the bullseye for Seaford. We knew that when we acquired it. We knew that someday when we were ready to develop this, this was the parcel that was going to bring people to Seaford, want to move here. Okay, most of our residents are coming from up north, retirees, or even relocating for work. And, you know, they all say to us every day, we have no place to eat. We have no place to entertainment. You know, there's a lot of stuff out on 13, a lot of these big chain restaurants. But I think what we can accomplish with this plan going forward is we can now attract someone and capture a good restaurateur group from, you know, other parts of Delaware and maybe even Maryland, that with the incentives we intend to give them. And we believe that this whole plan, I mean, I'm not getting into all the specifics right now unless you wanted to talk about it. We're here tonight just to talk about us possibly donating some of the property to make this plan work, because that's what it's going to take. We have to donate some of our property to accomplish this plan. So,
So just for the public's clarification, we're not voting on anything tonight. Why is this coming before us tonight? Why is the city involved in this at this point? Can you explain that so the public understands?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. So the city, the original plan that was shown, the city approved that plan. And we partnered with the Chesapeake Conservancy. And let me introduce Ms. Susan Morochelle. She is here representing the Conservancy tonight. I did request that they submit a letter because they were our partner in the development of this parcel. The plan, the master plan that you see, that master plan, there was a lot of energy put in that. There was several design charrettes with not only the Conservancy, but with the public at large to develop that parcel. The proposal that Mr. Fisher and Mr. Perlmutter are presenting tonight, as they've stated, expands this. So council really is the first stop for this to notify you there is new energy into this program. There is the potential request coming forward for redesigning of the park, relocating some of the key amenities. I do have, and I did request from the Chesapeake Conservancy a letter, and if you don't mind, I'd like to just read it into the record. It is in board pack for all the council members, but just real quick, it states the Chesapeake Conservancy is a proud partner with the city in conserving the city's riverfront to create river access for public enjoyment. In this endeavor, we have built relationships with private and public funders whose generous donations and grants enabled the acquisition of the Oyster House Park and its early phases of park development. Randall Larimore, the Conservancy's board chairman, participated in the February 10th meeting when David Perlmutter presented a Riverwalk concept plan encompassing the riverfront, including Oyster House Park. Randy offered comments that at that time regarding the new concept, which seemed to have been accepted. Thank you for sharing the second Riverwalk concept plan with the Conservancy and asking our team to review it and share our analysis with you. We understand the importance of serving both residents and the visiting public. We believe this new plan with a restaurant has the potential of reinvigorating downtown Seaford. Moving forward, we will evaluate both the Riverwalk concept presented by Mr. Perlmutter and the Oyster House Park Master Plan to determine how those plans achieve our mutually shared vision and how they best fit with the grants and donations entrusted to the Conservancy for the park. We will respond very soon and hope that working together to obtain funding, we can find a way to create additional excitement in Seaford. As your partner, we will continue to work with you to create spaces and conserve places that celebrate nature, history, heritage, and culture. And it is signed by Joel Dunn, President and CEO of the Conservancy. So we wanted to update council that there is new energy with this. There is new concept plans that are coming forward. And I think, and Mr. Perlmutter is going to jump in here, I think Mr. Perlmutter has a lot of energy, likes to move forward. I think he wants to take this plan and go further and try to develop it if there's no negative feedback from council, try to work with the Conservancy, work with the other funding partners to find funding to develop this plan. Did I state that generally correctly?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. Does the council have any questions from Mr. Perlmutter? Councilman King?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Perlmutter, first, I got a couple questions, but before I get in that, thank you. When you look back over this long journey, I mean, your investment in this community, in my opinion, is one of the starters, right? And so you look at what come after. So that initial investment and what you did there, in my opinion, was the spark for what we're seeing today. So thank you for that. The question that I have too, and thank you to your organization, when we rolled this out, right, this vision, this plan, I mean, we voted on this concept of say, hey, we're moving towards this. Phase one's complete, right? So there's an end, right? So we can look at this and say, hey, we've begun the project and we can see an end to the project. So my question is kind of based around if we change this concept now and we go in a completely different direction, maybe we can talk a little bit about timelines, and then also too, if we can talk about the power plant itself. I know a lot of that ground is contaminated, so if we could talk a little bit about what that process would look if that project was to go there. If you could talk a little bit around what that looks like.
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I brought my builder here tonight as well. And if I can't answer something, either Matt Volk, who's my builder with GGA, who just built our last building with the residents, is here tonight. We've been working closely with them on analyzing the existing power plant versus tearing it down and that kind of thing. But we want to move this along quickly. There's some obstacles with the power plant site. I think you're aware it's a contaminated site, as you mentioned. So we've already met with representatives from Senator Carper's office to see about getting some additional funding for the brownfield project. We experienced that on the first phase, and unfortunately, it's great that the state's here and they help with issues, or the EPA. I think they awarded us $250,000. Unfortunately, it goes to all third-party consultants. It doesn't go to the cleanup. So we've already done our homework, and we're already going down that path to see if there's a larger pool there that can be worked out. So we're moving forward on that path with the brownfield and hopefully obtaining more money to clean up the site, because the power plant is way more of a dirty site than what we had on phase 1 and 2. Right. Okay, so it's a major undertaking as far as work, and not just the money, but also they're going to try and streamline the process of the brownfield approvals, with all their paperwork and layers. So we've had 2 meetings with them, and we're getting very positive responses in that. So, so timing, we're working that path. If we can make an agreement with a shared partnership on donating some of our property, again, you know, we're going to tie strings to it, you know, or the agreement's going to have, you know, certain money has to be raised to build this beautiful amphitheater and Oyster House Welcome Center. You know, it's going to be gorgeous when it's done, but it's going to cost a lot of money. So that agreement has to get worked out. A sewer main has to be relocated down there. It would have had to be relocated anyways because the area we're donating is where we originally, on our approval that we received from you all for our preliminary plan when we came in here, and we've extended a couple times, showed a hotel on that site. Basically, there's no more hotel. We're putting this down there instead. So, so a major sewer relocation is going to have to be done, but that's all, we're working that avenue as well. There's some major site issues with retaining walls I spoke about that I don't have a pointer, but basically it's all the way from Market Street. We're going to have to build a retaining wall at the entrance at Market Street, and where all that parking is, it's going to have to be a retaining wall to down. Can I go up there? Okay. So there's a little retaining wall right here, right now, where your all's cooler tower is. You know, there's a little retaining wall. Charles, I don't know the size of it, but we're going to have to develop a retaining wall, basically going almost all the way down here, and a retaining wall here that backs up to the church property to get all this parking in. So my builder's here tonight. We've done some analysis. You know, there's a very expensive amount of site work that has to be done. I think we're talking almost 7 figures in retaining walls. I mean, this is even before buildings come out of the ground. So, but we want to fast track this. If we can get, you know, all the pieces together, you know, we want to move it as fast as we can. We think this is a game changer for the town, for the county, for the state, and I think it's going to be talked about for years to come. I don't think Seaford, and as a matter of fact, if you all do approve it tonight, or at least like what we want to do and tell us to move this forward, I'd like to find out who the city painter was on this screen back here, because I'd love to, I'll pay for it too. Where the old power plant is, well,
Yeah, he's
you
not,
know, the new buildings.
he's not
a few,
with us anymore. Yeah, he's passed away. He's deceased, yeah.
I know, but
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to show
Yeah.
the future, you know,
Yeah.
on that someday. So,
It's Woody.
but to give you an honest answer, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
a
and
lot
not
of
to be-
this is up to
Sure.
DENREC.
Sure.
You know, with the dirty site.
Sure. And not to be smart, but if we've got a vision, if we're working towards something now currently, and then we stop that, we pause that, we say, hey, let's do this, and then this doesn't come to fruition, right, then we're right back where we were.
Well, I'm not stopping. If I can work an agreement out on everything with donating the property, okay, there's gonna be, you know, both sides are gonna have to give on that. There's gonna have to be a sewer relocation. I think there's been some federal money allocated for sewer relocation. If all these pieces can be put together, I'm not stopping. And I think you know me. When I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do something.
Absolutely.
And as I said earlier tonight, Seaford is on an uptrend. It's been down for a long time. Its reputation has been down, but this is gonna be the game changer that is gonna forever change this town. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Perlmutter? Mr. Henderson?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Perlmutter. I think an amphitheater and a contact center at the base of Pine Street makes a lot of sense. Just basically where it's positioned in the downtown. But my main concern is Oyster House Park was tied to a place, the Robinson Oyster House, and that will no longer be there. The Oyster House will be moved, that contact center will be moving down 200 to 300 yards from where the original location of the Oyster House was. My concern is that you have a lot of history lovers here in the city who supported the original scheme, the original layout, because of Seaford's ties to the Robinson Oyster House where it was. And now it's being relocated. So there's going to have to be a lot of goodwill shown because the vision's changed, right? The Conservancy, Mr. Larimore, the Seaford Historical Society, all bought into this original concept. And you have a letter of support from the Conservancy. However, I'd like to see some more support from, say, the Historical Society about this, because to my knowledge, they haven't been a part of this, which they were a part of this in the early stages of the plan. So I'd like to see it develop some more, but I'd also like to see some other parts of the community have some feedback into your vision for how. Well, I know that it's easier to work in this fashion because access to an amphitheater at the base of Pearl Street and South Cannon offers. It's really only accessible by pedestrian. There's not a lot of traffic, and it looks like you've solved parking issues to have a major event at this venue. So I hope that you'll investigate further some of the other stakeholders that are involved. It's not just the city and the Conservancy. There are other stakeholders involved that I'd like to hear from.
We will talk further on that. I mean, where the amphitheater was on the original plan, I don't know if we can bring that up. Like you said, at Pearl Street, it's at the far end of the site. There's no parking. Okay. As you stated earlier, it's built into basically it's just a mountain of dirt right now, so it's going to be cut out and kind of like an outdoor for 50 or 75 seats. What I'm proposing here is something that to the magnitude of maybe 250, maybe 300 people, where you can have a concert, you can have venues, you can have movie nights for kids. I mean, this is going to be, I appreciate all this, and we will look further, absolutely.
I like the idea. It's just that at the inception of the plan, there were other stakeholders that had a lot of input into the plan, and I want to make sure that they're heard, that everyone is heard.
Absolutely. I thought when we met with Mr. Larimore on several occasions and their representatives, pretty much everyone was on board with this, but we will look further into it, absolutely. But if we can just flip to the new, this really is going to be a gateway. I mean, my vision is kind of having like at each entrance, South Pine and Market Street, kind of like a big, thing like you see in Wilmington, Seaford Riverwalk, lit up at night, something that's like, oh my God, what are we going into? No, seriously.
No, wow, yeah, that's the wow
like
factor
a wow
right
factor,
there, right,
okay?
wow factor, yeah.
This has got to be a wow factor that's going to blow people away. And not just a little entrance feature. I'm talking about big steel columns up at Pine Street, I mean, something that I just see it a couple years from now. We're all going to be sitting around laughing and saying, why didn't this happen sooner, in my mind? But again, I'm just a developer. I have a vision. We will absolutely, to answer your question, Mr. Henderson, we will meet with whoever we have to discuss it further. You know, I mean, that's, I guess, all I can say. I don't know if Keith or anyone else has anything to say.
When we met before, with in the comments that were brought up by the Conservancy group, those very high-level discussions were talked about that there are more people, that more entities that would play a role in this. And the thought process at this time was, before we went to them, we had to start somewhere. And this is where we're at. I do think that there, in discussion with Mr. Lattimore, there's opportunity to balance that out in ways that can enhance the project as a whole. Some iconic imagery, some things that represent the historical nature of the site, and then at the benefit of being able to relocate that Oyster's House to where we're showing it, it expands the educational purposes of that building and the exposure to the history of it. Where it was before was a much more limited footprint that you could only do so much with. What we're proposing, not in, I'd like to strike the record for what he said about the amount of people I'm going to fit inside of an amphitheater. But in addition to that, this building that's next to it would also now be able to serve both that school classrooms, all kinds of events that could highlight the historians and the historical nature in a much with a much larger resource available to them. But there's no question that that's who we have to talk to.
My point is that it would, try to put this, it would certainly lubricate the process if you had input from entities like the Seaford Historical Society to offer context and to give input on this, because they had an enormous amount of input at the inception phase.
Right. So, City Manager, what's the process? What's the flow of this? What happens next? What does the City Council need to be aware of? What does the public need to be made aware of?
I think at this juncture, Mr. Perlmutter's and his team have brought this concept plan out for the first run at the public. The comments, I think, are very helpful. That allows Mr. Perlmutter to do more due diligence on this, to develop this plan, and take care of some of these loose ends, some of these questions that have been asked. And then as the plan develops, we can certainly keep council up to date with his progress on fundraising, plan development, stakeholder meetings that he has to try to gain additional input and development of the plan.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Yes, sir.
Probably a bit off topic, but if down the line this is a very busy area, we have a lot of residents at River Place coming to that area, we may have to consider some type of additional walkway or traffic or some kind of idea of make sure people getting safely from point A to point B.
Good point.
I think Mr. Perlmutter offered up a water taxi service he was going to run, and we want to thank him for that right now publicly. It's really a great idea he came up with.
You're welcome. I'll actually run it myself. How about that?
No, you're right. I mean, but I think when I can remember when Mrs. Newcomer first came out with the charrettes of downtown and Gateway Park, and I think that was ultimately the vision, was that people from the hospital would walk down for lunch. I think it was the Conservancy's idea to protect that shoreline and allow people to have access to it, right? That the whole intent is to get people down there, right? That's been the whole intent. And I think Mr. Perlmutter's right that something needs to happen on this site, which I think he'd agree. We've not badgered him pretty regularly about we need to do something on this site, but we believe that having something down at the foot of that hill in the powerhouse is going to be a huge attraction for downtown and is going to probably spur on a whole new redevelopment of downtown and a whole new level. So I think we're all in agreement with that, but I think Councilman Henderson's right. We got to tie back to the historical fact, of where we came from on this, and then there's going to be a lot of fundraising and dollars are going to have to be put towards it. So you're right. Let's hope that's our issue. So yeah, that's a great thing. All right. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more. Good to see all of you. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have the first reading of ordinance to amend Chapter 5 of Article 4. Is this Mr. Bailey?
Mr. Bailey. Good evening again.
Hello again. So I have a proposed amendment to Chapter 5, Article 4, rental licenses that relate to nuisance properties. I believe you have copies of all this on your iPads, but I'll go over each point here. So this all generated from discussions at planning session. I think you all may remember about nuisance properties and issues we're having with them. So the first item would be that any property that violates the provisions of the adopted codes of the City of Seaford and/or generates any criminal nuisance violations 3 times within a 12-month period shall be considered a nuisance property. And then the second, or item B, notice of violation shall be sent to the owner of record via certified mail at the last known address with return receipt requested. This is our typical procedure currently for any violation. We do send them via certified mail so we can track that, know when they get it, know when to take action if they don't do anything. After a property is deemed a nuisance property, all fees and fines defined in this chapter shall be tripled for a term of 5 years. So their rental license, their violations, late fees, rent inspection fees, triple everything for that 5-year term. And then the violations under subsection A of this section continue during the 5-year term. The owner's rental license shall be revoked for the subject rental unit, and the property will be condemned and unoccupied for a minimum of 1 year. And any nuisance property designation shall be removed only after the 5-year term or the property changes ownership to a legal entity which is not owned or controlled by the current owner. And then the last one, any person aggrieved by any action taken in this section may appeal such action as outlined in section 545 of the article. That's basically all I've got for this.
So again, these were comments that all of you brought up and were raised at the planning session. That puts more teeth into the code and nuisance properties. This is a first reading, but are there any questions for Mr. Bailey while he's here? If not, this will come back to our next meeting for final reading and put in. So, Mr. Bailey, thank you for your work on that. Really appreciate it. And next, you're going to stay up here for the rental license reinspection late fees.
Yes, sir. So I've submitted a draft of the schedule of fees and rates with some updates to the rental license fees. Again, as we discussed during the planning session, I did not adjust the annual license fee. Everyone, I think, during discussion thought that was a fair number, but the reinspection fees and the late fees, they thought could be increased. So for the reinspection fee, I'm taking that from $50 to $100 for each additional inspection. That's either they don't show up for, it fails, we have to go back. And then the late fee for the license if they are late past the January 1st deadline, going from $25 to $100 for that as well.
All right, are there any questions in regards to these rental license changes and fees? Councilman Henderson?
Please. Thank you, sir. What is the fee if a landlord changes tenants and wants to reset under, he's got an annual license, and is that a reinspection fee, or how do you handle an interim voluntary inspection?
We don't charge for that currently. If they request an inspection, we don't charge for that. The charges are a punishment. Like we schedule an inspection, no one's there, shows up. We've wasted our time and have to go back.
I understand that. It's just that
courtesy inspections we just do as a courtesy.
It's a courtesy. What's your feeling on that? Because you got a four-person department, and if you get a number of them, that's going to take time away from your other business.
Yeah.
I would.
can't say that we get a lot of those requests.
Oh, okay. If it's not a large volume, then.
Yeah. People change tenants all the time and they don't notify us, but we have instituted a new mechanism at the front counter where we have another form. When they come fill out a service agreement for their electric, we want them to fill out this form with their tenant information for their house, so.
Because I envision, you get a lessee that moves out. The guy goes in and top coats the unit and gets it ready for the next tenant, and he wants to start from a clean slate, ask for an inspection.
Yeah, I don't think we get many of those requests. If we do, we just do them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions in regards to the rental license fee changes? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the changes to the rental license reinspection and late fees as listed in the schedule of fees and rates as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Councilman McCoy seconds. Any questions on the motion? Now we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Councilman Santos.
Aye.
And Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you
you for your
very
work on that. Appreciate it. All right, next we're going to invite up Mrs. Newcomer to go over Section 7, change in the charter that would allow domestic entities, including and not limited to corporations, partnerships, trusts, and everybody to vote. If you own a business, you could vote.
That's a mouthful.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Each of you have in your board pack a red line copy and a clean copy. We provided the red line copy so you can see what some of the changes to the existing charter have been. This really has stemmed after several years. I believe the conversation has been, do businesses get to vote in city elections? And currently that is no. So we were asked to ask the city solicitor to craft a charter change that we would then send up to the state legislator. As you know, that the state has to approve any kind of charter changes that we do. So I'm going to read this if you'll entertain me, just because there is so much language in here. The changes are of the city's charter, Section 7, the manner of holding elections. The first changes that you'll note are in Section A for voter qualifications, stating at such annual election, the following shall be permitted to vote. Item 1, every natural person, male, female, who shall have attained an age for voting as established by the state of Delaware for voting in general election, and who shall be a bona fide resident of the city of Seaford as of the day of final registration next preceding the annual election, with the add, shall have one vote. For purposes of this provision, bona fide resident means a permanent full-time resident of the city. Item 2. Every owner of property in the city as of the day of the final registration next preceding the annual election, whether a natural person or an artificial entity, including but not limited to corporations, partnerships, trusts, and limited liability companies, and who is registered to vote in the Book of Registered Voters maintained at City Hall, shall have one vote. An artificial entity shall be a domestic entity in the state of Delaware. And then the remaining of that paragraph that currently exists has been strucken. Number 3, these provisions shall be construed in accordance with the principle of one person, entity, one vote. Whether a voter is entitled to vote by virtue of being both a resident and an owner of real property, that voter shall be entitled to only one vote. Where a voter is entitled to vote by ownership of 2 or more parcels of real property, that voter shall be entitled to only one vote. Item 4, any legal entity other than a natural person entitled to vote must cast its vote by a duly executed and notarized power of attorney from the legal entity granting the authority to cast its vote to its designated attorney in fact. Such power of attorney shall be surrendered to the election officials as of the day of final registration next preceding the annual election, and the election officials shall file the same at the City Hall. Such power of attorney so filed shall constitute conclusive evidence of the right of said person to vote in the election on behalf of the legal entity granting the power. The person casting the ballot of such entity shall be age 18 on or before the date of the election and a citizen of the United States. Section B, voter registration. Registration of qualified voters shall be as follows. Commencing with the 2024 municipal election, voter registration for natural persons and artificial entities residing inside the city of Seaford limits shall be done through the State of Delaware Department of Elections and by electronic registration pursuant to the online registration system of the State of Delaware. And those are the changes that were put forth. I do want to clarify, because I had a conversation earlier today with Councilman King, and I believe I misspoke in my conversation with you. You asked me if a property owner, or if a business that didn't own the property could vote. It would actually have to be the business has to own the property in the city limits based on this language.
That's what I was gonna
So I
ask.
just wanted to clear that up,
So
because
when
I
you
did
look
say
at-
that to
when
you
look at
backwards
A2,
today.
it says every owner of property.
Yes, yes.
So like, just say Mr. Perlmutter for an example, because he was here, right? So he owns a shopping center and there's 20 tenants.
Correct. His
in that
tenants would
shopping
not
center, and that was my
just Mr.
question.
Yes, yes. I spoke incorrectly earlier
So
today,
it's
so I
just
just wanted
the
to.
property owner,
It's the
not the
property
people in
owner.
the suburb.
So if Mr. Perlmutter or Councilman King owns business X and you own the business that you're in, or the property that you're in, then that counts.
So it's the property, not the ownership of the business.
It's the business owner's property, yes.
But not
The
owner of the
easiest way in my mind, and it doesn't necessarily say it in this language, but, and it's kind of a gray area because there's some nonprofits, but if you pay taxes to the city of Seaford, a tenant doesn't pay taxes to the city of Seaford.
Well, I guess the example I used was like a landlord-tenant, right?
Right.
So I own the property, the tenant,
Yes.
the tenant rents from me, but the tenant has the ability to vote. Landlord-tenant. So that was my same question.
I don't believe, and we would have to clarify this language with the city solicitor. I don't believe as the property owner that you could turn your power of attorney over to your tenant, because that tenant technically is not on the entity's certificate of formation for the company.
What's the difference between commercial and residential, though? It's the same concept,
In
right?
this
theory.
instance, let's use I'm trying to pick a business that off the top of my head. Lang Johnson and Tall. Let's just use that one. They own that business. Currently, I don't know where they reside. They may not live in Seaford. So if they don't live in Seaford, they don't have a vote. Under this parameter, this would give them one vote as a property owner, business owner, I guess. in
Yeah,
the city.
I get that part. The thing that I'm still getting hung up on is I could own a business. I could be a business owner and have it LLC'd and have it whatever. Doesn't necessarily mean I could sublease the property. I'm still a business
Right, but the way it was
owner.
written before, LLCs were not permitted. So if your business wasn't an LLC,
Right.
wasn't in Councilman King or James King's property,
Right.
you weren't eligible to register as a non-resident property owner.
Right, but now you can.
Now, under
Right.
this language, yes.
Right, and so
Yep.
that's my example. So if I'm subleasing a property, right, and it's a business that I own in the city of Seaford, I own the business, I may not own the building, you're telling me I don't have the ability to vote.
Correct.
See, I don't agree with that.
This is
I
you guys
don't-
have the
yeah.
authority to
Yeah.
modify this. This is just information and language that our city solicitor provided.
Because
So
what's
you
the
guys
difference
can
if
massage
somebody,
this.
a
and-
renter and a tenant, what's the difference between an owner and a tenant, right, a residential than commercial? I
No,
could own a business and meet all these parameters, but not own the property. And
Correct.
you're telling me I can't vote because I don't own the property. Well, as a tenant, I don't own the property either.
So just, excuse me, just as a suggestion, and I'll say this, the Director of Economic Development and I have been kind of back and forth in all these scenarios, not specifically that one. How about if we put a list of these together? We'll get them in front of the city solicitor, and we'll bring back.
But then, does it make
specific-
sense what I'm asking? I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but
No.
if I own a business.
I understand what you're saying,
We gotta,
absolutely.
we need to be very specific and very clear who can vote and who cannot vote. I think this was a big hurdle just to get this on the books, to have a
Correct.
conversation to say businesses can vote, because if you've ever run for an election in the city of Seaford, you've been asked by a business owner, can I vote?
Yeah, but
And
you're
you've had
not
to tell
saying
them
all
no.
business owners. You're
So
saying if
we need to
this
get
is a property owner.
clarification. Let me finish.
Right, okay.
Let's get clarification on this. This will not have any impact on this election. This is a charter change, so this is something we got to ask Representative Short and Senator Richardson to take up on our behalf to change our charter. So we want to make sure it's clear. We need to also make sure, do we have flexibility in that? Is that something we have a decision on that legally? So we'll get that, and if there's other questions in regards to who can and who cannot vote, let's, what other questions are there? Councilman McCoy?
So, in theory, I agree that businesses should be able to vote. My talking point or concern would be surrounding the possibility of somebody who has a variety of rental properties and has a variety of LLCs underneath their name. That person can only vote one time.
That's correct.
However, if they have other people listed as either co-owners or people on their board or different ways of manipulating it, having that opportunity for them to do proxy, I'm a little concerned that opens you up to potential voting issues and voter fraud, where you have people manipulating people to vote certain ways. So, again, in theory, high level, I'm in agreement with it, but I think this opens up some additional questions needing more clarification.
The way I understood it, but we'll get more clarification, is if you're a corporation, for example, and you're here in Seaford, that corporation could designate one person to vote. I don't believe that designee can change based on each election. It's not if that person leaves the company, it can be changed, but I don't think it can be flip-flopped, like that. But I get your concern. We'll get some clarification around how that designated person that represents that business and how that can change.
I have one of them.
Yes, sir.
Just for example, so you're saying, way I get it, Sal owns a business, Sal's Pizzeria, but he owns the property, so he cannot vote.
We're going to get clarification around that.
The way,
That's right.
I believe the way that it is written,
now,
that is
right,
correct.
okay.
That's correct. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Comment. I know of several instances where owners of commercial property own the property as a sole proprietorship, and they already have a vote because they're a sole proprietor. I don't see any difference in having an LLC or a corporation that owns a piece of property being able to vote. It's only right. Now, someone who has a commercial interest in the business, I think is something different. I don't think that's a fair comparison to a resident who actually lives here in a rented piece of property.
Right. Well, I think we do need to get some clarification, because if you're leasing that property, you're still paying water, sewer, and electric. Just like you would a rental, someone who's renting property who can vote in our elections. So we just need to make sure how our business is treated differently, if that's the case, that they can't vote, and what's the understanding around that. We just need to make sure we're super duper clear in this language, because once it goes forward, I don't want any confusion. I certainly don't want, well, scratch that. We just want to make sure it's tight and it's very clear so everybody has an understanding. But I think the genesis of this is we have people that have invested a ton of money in our town in businesses, and then they wonder why they can't vote, but their employees can vote just because they live outside of city limits. And they have a valid point, and we certainly want businesses to invest in our town, and they should have one vote.
I'm sorry. No.
Councilman King.
Well, I thought the thing that concerns me too is, we've had the book of registries forever, right? So we've eliminated that to a certain point.
To a certain point.
Right. And so now, if with this implementation of all this, we're kind of opening that avenue back up, right? So there's still a lot.
They will have to register, and that they will have to provide additional documentation as well.
Exactly. So to me, that we're making the progress, we're making the process of voting, we're putting a lot more obstacles and barriers in front of potential voters that they shouldn't have to deal with.
That's one way to look at it. You could also look at it, we're opening up people to vote in the town that they work and live in. So more people are going to have access to voting that have, now, how big is this group? Is it 10, 20, 30, 40 people? I don't know, but these are people that have invested a ton of money in our town, have been asking to vote, right? And we've been saying, you know, people vote for people has been our standard response. People vote for people. But businesses are made up in most cases of people. So.
Right, but my point being is that maybe we can look at that process too, so we can simplify it for them, right? That's what I'm saying, is maybe look at that and saying, hey, maybe we can take some of those steps away, was my point, is encouraging the vote, but maybe make it easier for them to vote.
It's a good point, and we are not, I'll say this, I believe I'm correct, the city clerk and yourself did some research on, this is language that has been adopted in other.
This is actually, I don't know if the solicitor pulled it from there, but we, both the city clerk and myself, the town of Fenwick Island has the same verbiage
So what we'll
similar
do,
to this.
in addition to reaching out and playing 20 questions with the attorney, getting some scenarios back that are understandable, we'll reach out to Fenwick Island as well and say, how have you managed this?
Sure, absolutely.
How do you handle these situations, real world? How does your election staff do this? Because I'll be honest, we've not done it.
Right.
We, as the mayor said, we want to make sure we maintain the integrity in our election system. If somebody has a question, we want to answer it clearly and concisely.
And this is our,
we want to reduce barriers.
Sure, absolutely.
This is our first go at it, you know, we can't do this in any other manner other than crafting it and bringing it to you to read. So we couldn't have these back and forth conversations any other way, so.
We're not under any real super time crunch, but we do want to get it up to Legislative Hall before, in time to present to get a charter change.
And
Yes.
just to make the statement, I believe council, all of council is aware, this would be presented, we'd have to find sponsorship from our representative and our senator, have to get the language right through our lobbyists, and then it would have to be adopted by the legislature, so it would not be in play until the 2024 election.
Correct.
So it does not affect this election.
Right, not at all. Yes, sir.
Just so I'm clear, Councilman King.
Yeah.
Walmart leases property from Rivercrest Realty. Should Walmart have a vote in the city election?
Is it in the city of Seaford limits?
Yeah.
It is.
Then
Should
based,
Food Lion?
is it in the city of Seaford?
Yes.
Okay. They're paying utilities, right? They're leasing or
No,
subleasing.
my question.
My question.
It
Right.
was a yes or no.
Right,
I
but I
mean-
think you're looking at, like Orlando said, Sal's, right? So you're looking at a larger comparison, but in my opinion,
Well,
the
you
same
gotta be
answer.
fair.
No, I'm saying, but let me finish. So it's this, my answer would be, it's the same thing at a much larger scale, right? So Sal's and Walmart, in my opinion, would be the same. Now, the only difference is Sal is an independent owner operator. He doesn't have a board and have to do all these additional steps to get one person picked in order to cast the vote.
That's my question. Should every business in town, that's licensed in town, have a vote?
If it's based on this, yes.
So I think that's not how, I don't think that's how it's written, but that's why we need to get some clarification. I think
I don't
that's.
agree with that.
And we need to have some real clear, and maybe we can reach out to Fenwick. If that is not the case, why? What is their reason?
But I
behind that?
I wouldn't think they would cast a vote. I don't think they would have the interest in casting a vote.
In most cases, they will not, right? I mean, this is really, in my mind, this is to capture your local family, Seaford family, that has a business here in town. They just happen to live a mile the other way, right? Shame on them, they should live in town, but they don't. But their business is here, and they're investing a lot of money in here. So this is to give, again, I don't know how big this group is. My guess is it's not very large, but it's to encourage those people to participate in the process, and they should, so. Okay, Councilman McCoy.
Point of order real quick. If this was up for approval of a charter change, do we need, if we want to get further information, do we need to make a motion to table?
We do, and to bring it back after we've gathered some more information. I would think by the next meeting, we could have that information, and if we need to, the city solicitor offered to come down tonight. I thought most of the questions we could handle, but we need to get clarification. We need to be spot on this.
Right, and
No one
just
has
if
any
I could,
question.
one more, and I'll stop, just to kind of answer Councilman Henderson's question. I think at the end of the day, you gotta be consistent, right? So we can't pick and choose and saying, hey, well, he's a small business owner that doesn't own the building, that's renting the property, but lives in Seaford or outside the city limits, you can vote, right? And then a large-sized corporation, you say, oh, well, so regardless of whatever direction we go, I think we gotta be consistent and streamline the process, not pick and choose who it applies to and who doesn't.
And I'm just concerned about our employees who handle this, that they're super clear on what they're accepting and not, because.
Well, from our perspective, we would like it to be
Yeah.
as clear as possible.
Absolutely clear, so.
Yeah, and I don't mean any harm, but the
No,
answer.
totally.
The answer from this afternoon, right, when we
Right.
talk, is it's completely
And
360
it
to
is
the night.
and I will admit 100%, you caught me off guard. I was in the middle of preparing for stuff tonight, and I gave you an off-the-cuff answer and didn't go to my notes 100% when I read, and that's why I am admitting my
No, and I'm not saying
misspeaking
it because
from
of that.
earlier
I
today.
love open debate and open conversation. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying there's a gray area, right? And so the answer has changed from 3 hours ago.
So with that, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to table the changes to Section 7 of the City of Seaford Charter for further evaluation.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Holland, I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you very much. You'll bring it back. Appreciate it, Tricia. All right, next we have the bids for High Street maintenance.
Miss.
See what happens when you're last on the agenda. Who would have thought? 9:40.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sorry for my voice. So, we received one bid for the landscaping maintenance, and this is the High Street maintenance bid from Designscapes LLC in the total amount of $31,608, which will come out of the FY23 and FY24 budgets. Excuse me.
I hate to ask, but does anybody have any questions for Ms. Hickey? You almost want to, don't you? If she had gone on at 7 o'clock, her voice was perfect.
It's been fun answering the phone all day today.
If there are no questions, I will accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to award the bid of High Street maintenance to Designscapes LLC, low bidder, in the amount of $10,712 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion from Councilman McCoy. Any questions on the motion? Now we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
All right.
Thank
Thank
Ms.
you.
Hickey. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, do we have any old business?
We do not.
Reminder of meetings.
Okay, the only thing we have is the municipal election, Saturday, April 15th, 2023. The field of candidates is set. That is Councilman Jose Santos. He has filed for re-election. Mike Bradley has filed for the office of councilman, and Councilman Dan Henderson has filed for re-election. I have no other meetings or reminders.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll go to Administration IT. Councilman Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The following meetings were attended by city staff. They participated in a DMEC audit kickoff. They participated in a redevelopment meeting with the developer of the Nylon Capital Shopping Center. They attended a drinking water subcommittee meeting at the NREC. They met with representatives of the Methodist Manor House regarding electric service responsibilities. They prepared, they reviewed IBW contract drafts. They worked on employee evaluations. They made an inspection of the building's damage. They made an inspection of building damage at the Curiosity Shop. They completed, for the IT report, they completed updating pools and late windows OS build. They worked on finalizing departmental budget items. For the administration report, they've been working on fiscal year 2024 budget. They participated in the annual electric rate classification review. All of their business is routine.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Police and Fire, Councilman Henderson.
I have a full report, but I want to make it very brief this evening. Chief Wilson reports Along with its normal report, I will say that there was an incident with B87, ambulance B87 on February 20th. While entering the emergency room entrance, they encountered a Caroline County ambulance opening their driver door to exit and struck the side of B87, causing damage. Caroline County took full responsibility for the incident, and all proper documentation was sent to the city and was investigated by the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department. So B87 is scheduled for repairs at Wayside and Denton on March 13th due to that incident. Would like to announce that the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department Toy and Train Show was a success. It returned for its 27th year, and it was viewed as successful. Along with Chief Kraft's report, it's a full report with lots of data. I will say that the clearance rate has increased since the last period, and also there's an update. In 2022, there were 19 cases involving theft from vehicles that occurred, and all of these cases were cleared on February 14th when CID, Criminal Investigative Division, detectives identified and arrested a juvenile suspect. So those 19 cases have been closed successfully. In an effort to save my voice, I think I'll yield. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well done. Next, Code, Parks and Rec, Councilman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start with code. 1,749 rental license has been issued with late fees sent out February the 1st. Ongoing rental inspections are being held and scheduled for 2023. Bel Air single-family dwellings on Danfield Drive has submitted those plans for review, which we heard tonight. All the work is routine, and we'll change over to Parks and Recs. Bobby met with Delaware Forestry to review potential grant projects at Kiwanis Park and Seropolis Park. And they held youth basketball playoff and championships on the week of 2/13. And the Sixers, ages from 6 to 9, were the champions, and the Knicks were the 10 to 13 age group champions. And a post-program survey has been created for youth basketball and sent out to all participants to complete and continue improving the program. There are around 100 kids that have signed up for youth soccer and are currently working on finding coaches and referees. And they are working on the Easter egg hunt program, and that will be presented later. And all the work is routine, and that concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman McCoy, Electric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a few highlights on the report. They started working with the contractor, changing out services in Martin Farms Phase 2. Worked on School Lane, setting a pole for the maintenance building at middle school. Energized a new service at 106 Spring Street and separated the electric services at 550 and 560 Rush Street. Regarding our director, he had his standard director's meeting, council liaison meeting, worked on year-end reports, and worked on the FY24 budget. Over the course of the next few weeks, they're going to begin working in Bel Air single-family residence, start working on Muirfield 1 Phase 3, and the plan will be to attend the annual Del Dot Utility Summit. And off the menu as it were, we have breaking news into Sports Center, Mr. Mayor. The Seaford Blue Jays will host the Dover Spartans on Thursday night, 7 p.m. in Seaford. So get your tickets early, get brought to the game early.
I'm telling you, it's like with a news reporter here. That's awesome. All right, finally, we have Councilman King, wastewater treatment and public works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report has been submitted in entirety. I'm going to hit some of the highlights. The team finished up cleaning key sewers. They installed a dead-end sign on Perkins Street at the request of the Seaford Police Department. Seaford Village lift station pump was pulled and unclogged. The team has been replacing registers and antennas on water meters. All employees attended the DRWA conference, and the department is still down one team member who is on medical leave. Jumping over to the wastewater treatment facility, all is operating well, plant performance remains good. Work continues on the RAS pump installation and some of the projects that are happening over the next few weeks. We're gonna rebuild the Seaford Village and Manor House pumps, install a few new flow meters, prepare cleanouts on the smoke testing list, and continue, unfortunately, to manually read water meters. They've been, Burley and his team have been doing over 200 water meters manually until they get everything up and running again. Yes, it's a painful process, but the team's doing it, so. And with that concludes my report.
Well, I do want to say I'm grateful that our wastewater treatment plant always is performing well. I think it's been reported that way for 10 years. And we don't know how lucky we are that it performs well. It's late, and with that, I'll accept a motion to go into executive session.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Motion from Councilman McCoy, second.
I'll second.
Councilman Santos, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Good night.